Chapter 1. Kaylin, I am a creature of habit, and my worst habit is her. Check the perimeter, check the exits, check the mirror. It is a drill I have run 1,000 times a day since I was old enough to hold a weapon. But for the last 6 months, my routine has included a detour that my security detail hates. Take the long way, I told the driver. The interior of the SUV was silent, sealed off from the grime of the city by bulletproof glass and soundproofing. I sat in the back, the leather cool against my suit jacket, watching the rain streak the window. We turned onto 4th Street. It was a neighborhood that the city had forgotten, full of flickering streetlights and potholes that could swallow a sedan. It was Rossi territory adjacent, dangerous ground for a Kovac to be idling in, but I did not care. "Slow down," I said. The driver, a man named Russo who had been with my father for 20 years, caught my eye in the rearview mirror. He did not like this. He knew what I was looking for. He slowed the heavy vehicle to a crawl. There it was. The Crumb. It was a stupid name for a bakery. It sounded small, insignificant. But the light spilling out of the front window was the warmest thing in this entire God-forsaken city. It was yellow and soft, cutting through the gray drizzle. I watched. I waited. And then she appeared. Ilara. I did not know her last name. I only knew the name stitched in red thread on her white apron. She was moving behind the counter, wiping down the display case. It was 11 at night. She should have been home. She should have been safe behind a locked door. Instead, she was dancing. She did a little 2-step shuffle as she sprayed the glass, her hips swaying to music I could not hear. A strand of brown hair had escaped her messy bun and was falling into her eyes. She blew it away, scrubbed a spot on the glass, and then spun around to stack the chairs. My chest tightened. It was a physical ache, a pressure behind my ribs that had nothing to do with the Kevlar vest I wore under my shirt. She looked exhausted. Even from the street, I could see the shadows under her eyes. She worked too hard. She was too thin. She needed someone to feed her a steak and make her sleep for 12 hours. Russo cleared his throat. "I know," I said. "Go." We accelerated. The image of her dancing alone in the empty bakery vanished into the rainy night, replaced by the blur of wet pavement. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. The image of her was burned onto the back of my eyelids. It was pathetic. I was Kaylin Kovac, the heir to the biggest criminal empire on the eastern seaboard. I could have any woman I wanted. I could walk into the most exclusive clubs in the city and leave with a model on each arm. But I did not want a model. I wanted the girl with flour on her hands and a hole in her sneaker. Tonight, the weight of the crown felt heavier than usual. My father, the Don, was pushing for a decisive strike against the Rossi family. The war had been simmering for years, a cold war of territory disputes and stolen shipments. But now the water was boiling over. There were talks of alliances, of marriage contracts, of blood needing to be spilled. I was tired of the noise. I was tired of the blood. I opened my eyes. We were only a few blocks away from the bakery, heading toward the highway that would take us to the estate. "Turn around," I said. Russo hesitated. "Boss, we are exposed out here. The chatter on the wire is high tonight." "Turn the car around, Russo." He didn't argue again. He spun the wheel, the tires screeching slightly on the wet asphalt. We headed back. I was breaking my own rule. For 6 months I had stayed in the shadows. I watched her because it grounded me. It reminded me that there was a world where people worried about burnt croissants and rent money, not car bombs and federal indictments. If I touched her world, I would stain it. I knew that. I was oil. She was water. But tonight I didn't care. I needed to be in the same room as her. Just once. I needed to smell the air she breathed. "Park here," I said. "Keep the engine running." I opened the door before the bodyguard in the passenger seat could get out to open it for me. The rain hit my face, cold and sharp. I buttoned my jacket, checking the line of it to make sure my sidearm was concealed, and strode across the sidewalk. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped inside. The smell hit me instantly. Vanilla, yeast, sugar, and underneath it all, the scent of cheap cleaning solution. Ilara was behind the counter, counting out the till. She froze. Her head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. They were the color of whiskey, golden and brown and startlingly clear. She knew me. I could see the recognition flash across her face. She had seen the SUV. She had probably wondered who the creep was. I stopped in the middle of the shop. It was smaller than it looked from the outside. The floor was checkered linoleum, cracked in places. The display case was mostly empty, just a few lonely muffins left. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was raspy, like she hadn't spoken in hours. It scraped over my nerves in the most pleasant way possible. I walked to the counter. Up close, she looked even more tired. There was a smudge of flour on her cheekbone. I had a sudden, violent urge to reach out and wipe it away with my thumb. I shoved my hands into my pockets to keep them from doing something stupid. "Coffee," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet space. "Rough. Black." She blinked. "We closed 5 minutes ago." I turned the machine off. I stared at her. I didn't leave. I couldn't. Now that I was this close, the gravity of her was pulling me in. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to lock the door, pull the shades, and just exist in this space where the biggest problem was a turned-off coffee machine. "I will wait for it to heat up," I said. She hesitated. She looked at the door, then back at me. She was wary. Good. She should be. I was a wolf in a suit standing in her grandmother's kitchen. "Okay," she whispered. She turned her back to me to fiddle with the machine. I watched the line of her neck, the way the stray hairs curled against her pale skin. She was tense. Her shoulders were up by her ears. "I'm Kaylin," I said. I don't know why I said it. She knew who I was. Everyone knew the name Kovac, but I wanted to say it to her. I wanted to hear her say it back. "I know," she said, not turning around. The machine hissed and sputtered. "You are the guy who watches me from the car." I felt a flush of heat go up my neck. I wasn't used to being called out. I was the predator, the one who moved in silence. "I like the bread," I lied. I had never eaten a crumb of food from this place. "You have never come in to buy any," she pointed out. She turned around, a paper cup in her hand. She placed it on the counter. It was steaming. "On the house," she said. "Just, please don't park in the loading zone anymore. It scares the delivery guys." I stared at the cup. Then I looked up at her. Her eyes were defiant, despite the tremor in her hands. She was terrified, but she was standing her ground. I smiled. It felt rusty on my face. "I will move the car," I said. I reached for the cup. Our fingers brushed. It was like touching a live wire. A jolt went straight up my arm and settled heavy in my groin. She gasped softly and pulled her hand back, cradling it against her chest. We stared at each other, the air between us crackling with sudden, thick tension. That was when my instincts screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The air pressure in the room shifted. I looked out the front window. A car was rolling down the street. A sedan. Gray. No lights. It was moving too slow. It wasn't passing by. It was hunting. My heart stopped. Then it restarted with a violent thud. "Get down!" I roared. Ilara looked confused. She opened her mouth to speak. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I vaulted over the counter. I crashed into her, wrapping my arms around her waist and twisting my body in midair. I slammed us both to the hard floor behind the counter just as the world exploded. The sound was deafening. Automatic gunfire. It shredded the silence, tearing through the glass, the wood, the air. Pop, 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 pop. The display case shattered, raining shards of glass down on us. The coffee machine exploded in a hiss of steam. I covered her completely. My large frame eclipsed hers, shielding her from the chaos. I pressed her face into my chest, my hand cupping the back of her head to protect her skull. She was screaming, but I couldn't hear it over the roar of the guns and the blood rushing in my ears. I waited for the burn. I waited for the bullet that would punch through my back and end me. I didn't care, as long as it hit me and not her. Then, silence. Tires screeched outside. My security detail was returning. Fire now, their heavy handguns barking in the street, but the sedan was already speeding away. The bakery was quiet, save for the sound of falling glass and the hiss of the broken espresso machine. The smell of vanilla was gone, replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of gunpowder. I lay still for a second, breathing hard. I was alive. I did a quick mental check. No pain, no holes. "Ilara?" I rasped. She was trembling beneath me, a violent shaking that rattled her bones. She was clutching my lapels so hard her knuckles were white. "Ilara, talk to me. Are you hit?" I pushed myself up on my elbows, hovering over her. Her eyes were squeezed shut. Her face was pale, dusted with fine glass powder. I don't know," she whispered. "It hurts." I looked down. The white apron, the pristine white apron I had watched for months. It was turning red. A dark, wet stain was spreading across her left side, just above her hip. No. The word ripped out of my throat, a guttural sound of pure horror. "No, no, no." I sat up, dragging her with me. I ripped the apron strings, pulling the fabric away. Her gray t-shirt was soaked. I pulled the hem up with shaking hands. There was a gash along her ribs. It was ugly, jagged, bleeding sluggishly but heavily. A graze, a deep graze, or maybe a fragment of the bullet had lodged. It wasn't a kill shot. It wasn't in her lung. But there was so much blood. I looked at my hands. They were coated in it. Her blood. I did this. The realization hit me harder than any bullet could have. I brought this here. I brought the war to her doorstep because I was selfish, because I couldn't stay away. "Kaylin," she whimpered. She looked at the blood on her side, her eyes going wide and glassy. "Am I dying?" "No," I snarled. I pressed my hand against the wound, applying pressure. She cried out, a sharp, high sound that sliced through my heart. "Look at me, Ilara. Look at me. You are not dying. I won't let you." The door to the bakery was kicked open. Russo rushed in, gun drawn, scanning the room. "Boss, you clear? We need a medic!" I shouted. "Now!" Russo looked at Ilara, then at me. "Boss, the police will be here in 3 minutes. We have to go. We cannot be here when the cops show up. The press—" "Screw the press," I yelled. I scooped Ilara up into my arms. She was light, too light. Her head lolled against my shoulder. She was going into shock. "We are taking her," I said. Russo's eyes widened. "Boss, we can't. She's a civilian. We drop her at the ER door and we leave. That is the protocol." "Protocol?" I laughed, and it was a terrifying sound. "Protocol went out the window the moment I walked in here. Open the damn door, Russo!" I stood up, holding her tight against my chest. Her blood was soaking into my expensive suit, staining my shirt, warm and sticky. I didn't care. I would burn every suit I owned if it meant she was okay. Ilara looked up at me. Her eyes were losing focus. My shop, she whispered. My glass. I will buy you 1,000 shops, I swore. I walked through the debris, crunching over the ruins of her life. I carried her out into the rain. The street was chaotic. My men were shouting, securing the perimeter. The dark SUV was waiting, the back door already open. I slid inside, pulling her onto my lap. Go, I ordered. The estate. Russo jumped in the front. Boss, the estate! Your father! Drive! The car peeled out, leaving the shattered bakery behind. I looked down at Ilara. She was shivering. I pulled off my jacket and wrapped it around her, tucking it tight to keep her warm. I kept my hand pressed hard against her side. You stay with me, I commanded. You hear me? You stay with me. She blinked slowly. Why? She murmured. Her voice was slurring. Because, I whispered, brushing a piece of glass out of her hair. Because I am not finished with you yet. She closed her eyes. Her breathing was shallow. I stared out the window at the blurring city lights. My hand was cramping from the pressure I was applying to her wound. The rage inside me was building, a cold, dark inferno. Whoever did this, whoever ordered the hit, I would find them. I would peel the skin from their bones. But first, I had to save her. I pulled her closer, burying my face in the curve of her neck. She smelled like vanilla and iron. I got you, I whispered into her skin. I got you.
Chapter 2. Ilara. Waking up was a fight against gravity. My body felt heavy, sinking into a mattress that was far too soft to be my own. My eyelids were glued shut, and my mouth tasted like cotton and old pennies. For a long moment, I just floated in the darkness, trying to piece together why my alarm clock hadn't gone off. I had the opening shift. I needed to prep the dough. If I didn't get up, Mrs. Gable would have to do the heavy lifting, and her arthritis was bad this week. I tried to roll over. A scream tore through my mind, though it came out as nothing more than a ragged gasp. Pain, white-hot and blinding, exploded in my left side. It wasn't an ache. It was a tearing sensation, like someone had taken a hot poker and shoved it between my ribs. The agony snapped the tether of sleep instantly. My eyes flew open. I wasn't in my apartment. I wasn't in my lumpy twin bed with the drafty window. I was in a room that looked like something out of a period drama. The ceilings were impossibly high, lined with dark, polished wood. Heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight against the day, letting in only slivers of gray light. The air smelled different here. It didn't smell like the city, exhaust and rain. It smelled like expensive leather, sandalwood, and the sharp, chemical sting of antiseptic. I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my vision. There was a steady rhythmic beeping somewhere to my right. A monitor. I turned my head, gritting my teeth against the pull in my side. He was there. The man from the bakery. The customer with the expensive suits and the intense eyes. The one I had secretly nicknamed the Suit, because he never spoke, never smiled, just watched. He was sitting in a wingback chair in the corner of the room, looking like a statue carved out of misery. He was still wearing the same clothes from last night. Or was it last night? His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But the shirt wasn't white anymore. It was stained with dried, rusty brown smears. Blood. My blood. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The coffee machine hissing. The bell chiming. Him walking in, filling the small space with his overwhelming presence. And then the noise. The glass shattering. the feeling of being tackled to the floor, the wet warmth spreading across my apron. I tried to sit up, panic clawing at my throat. "Don't move," he said. His voice was rough, like he had been swallowing gravel. He moved instantly, rising from the chair with a fluid grace that shouldn't have been possible for a man of his size. He was by the bedside in 2 strides, his hands hovering over me, terrifyingly gentle. "You will tear the stitches," he warned. "Lay back down." I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. The monitor sped up, betraying my fear with a frantic beep, beep, beep. "Where am I?" I whispered. My voice was barely a croak. "Is this a hospital?" "No," he said. He poured water from a crystal, carafe into a glass, and held it to my lips. "Drink." I took a sip because I didn't have the strength to argue. The water was cool and clean. I pulled away, gasping. "You aren't answering me. Where am I? Who are you?" He set the glass down on the nightstand with a heavy clink. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the exhaustion etched into the lines of his face. His eyes were dark, almost black in the dim light, and filled with something that looked painfully like guilt. "I am Kaylin," he said. "Kaylin Kovach. And you are at my family's estate." The name dropped into the room like a bomb. Kovach. The air left my lungs. I knew that name. Everyone in this city knew that name. You didn't live in Viridia Bay without knowing who ruled the streets. The Kovachs were old money, dirty money, dangerous money. They were the reason certain neighborhoods were safe and others were war zones. They were the reason the police sometimes looked the other way. I looked at the man standing over me. The sharp jawline, the predator's stillness, the SUV that idled outside my work. He wasn't just a rich customer. He was the prince. "Oh my God," I breathed. I tried to scoot back against the pillows, putting distance between us. The movement pulled at my wound again, and I hissed, tears pricking my eyes. "Easy," he murmured. He reached out as if to steady me, but stopped inches from my arm, hurling his fingers into a fist. "I am not going to hurt you, Ilara." "You brought me to the Kovach estate?" I asked, my voice rising in hysteria. "Why? Why am I not at General Hospital?" "Because you wouldn't have made it to General without bleeding out in the ambulance," he said flatly. "And because I wasn't going to leave you exposed in a public ER with a gunshot wound that I caused." He caused. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a soft gray t-shirt that wasn't mine. It was huge, hanging off my shoulder. Someone had changed me. I felt a flush of shame and fear. You changed my clothes?" "A nurse," he corrected quickly. "We have a private medical wing. My family's doctor performed the surgery. He stitched you up." "Surgery?" I stared at him. "How bad is it?" "It grazed your ribs," he said, his gaze dropping to the bandage hidden beneath the shirt. "It tore through the oblique muscle. It missed your internal organs, but it was deep. You lost a lot of blood." I closed my eyes, the reality of my situation crashing down on me. I had been shot. I was in a Mafia compound. And I was talking to the heir of a criminal empire who had apparently been stalking me for coffee. "I need to leave," I said, opening my eyes. "I can't be here. I have rent due on the 1st. I have to open the bakery tomorrow. Mrs. Gable can't do the heavy lifting." Kaylin let out a short, humorless laugh. He ran a hand through his dark hair, messing it up. "The bakery is a crime scene, Ilara. There is no opening tomorrow. The front of the building is gone." My stomach dropped. "Gone?" "Destroyed," he confirmed. I felt tears spill over my lashes, hot and angry. That job was everything. It was my tuition money. It was my rent. It was the only place in the world where I felt useful. "I have to go," I repeated, swinging my legs toward the edge of the bed. I groaned as the pain spiked, turning my vision white at the edges. I gritted my teeth and pushed through it. can't afford this. I don't have insurance for a private surgeon. I don't have money for— Stop. He stepped into my space, his thighs bracing against the mattress, effectively blocking me from getting up. He placed his hands on my shoulders, not pushing me down, just holding me there, grounding me. His grip was warm and firm. "Money is not a conversation we are having," he said. His voice dropped an octave, becoming steel. "You aren't paying for anything." I tried to shrug him off, but I was weak as a kitten. "I don't take charity, especially not from people like you." "People like me?" he asked. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You mean the people who get you shot?" "Yes," I snapped. "Why were they shooting? They weren't robbing the register. They didn't even come inside. They were shooting at you." "Yes," he admitted. He didn't flinch away from the accusation. He owned it. "They were shooting at me. I was being tracked. I stepped into your world and I brought the war with me." "Then let me go," I cried. "If you are the target, then being here is the most dangerous place I could be. I am a baker, Kaylin. I make muffins. I don't do gunfights. I need to go home to my apartment and my cat and pretend this never happened." "Barnaby is fine," he said. I froze. "What?" "Your cat," he said calmly. "Barnaby. The orange tabby with one ear. He has been fed. I sent someone to your apartment an hour ago to check on him and make sure your window was locked." The air left the room. "How do you know my cat's name?" I whispered. "I never told you that. I never told you anything. We have never had a conversation longer than coffee, black, and have a nice day." Kaylin pulled back, removing his hands from my shoulders. He stood up straight, towering over the bed. He looked uncomfortable now, shifting his weight. He looked at the window, then back at me. "I know you live on 4th Street, apartment 4B, he said. "I know you walk home because you're saving for a car. I know you buy your groceries on Tuesday nights because that's when they restock the produce." I stared at him, horror dawning on me. The black SUV, the idling engine, the way I sometimes felt eyes on me when I was unlocking my front door. "You've been watching me," I said. My voice was trembling. "You're a stalker." "I'm a protector," he corrected, though he looked like he tasted bile. Or I tried to be. Clearly, I failed. "You're sick," I said, shrinking back against the headboard. "Maybe," he agreed. He walked over to the window and pulled back the heavy curtain just an inch, peering out at the grounds below. "But that doesn't change the reality of the situation." "Which is, what?" I asked. "That I'm your prisoner?" "That you are under my protection," he said. He turned back to face me, his face hard and unyielding. The vulnerability I thought I saw earlier was gone, replaced by the mask of the prince. "The men who shot at us saw you, Ilara. They saw me cover you, they saw me carry you out." "So?" "So in my world that makes you a weakness," he explained. "It makes you leverage. If I send you back to your apartment on 4th Street, they will find you. They will finish what they started just to send a message to me." I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry. "So I'm stuck here?" "Until you are healed," he said. "Until I know who ordered the hit and I have handled it." "Handled it," I repeated. "You mean killed them?" "Yes." He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't apologize for it. He just stated it like it was the weather report. "I can't stay here, Kaylin. I don't belong here. Look at this room. Look at me. I'm a nobody. I'm just the girl who pours your coffee. You are not a nobody," he said fiercely. He walked back to the bed, leaning down until his face was level with mine. His eyes searched mine, intense and burning. "You are the only innocent thing I have ever known, and I will be damned if I let my world destroy you more than it already has." He reached out, his hand hovering near my face again. I flinched. He froze, his jaw tightening. He pulled his hand back slowly, clenching it into a fist at his side. "Rest," he commanded. "The doctor will be in to check your vitals in an hour. If you need anything, pain meds, food, water, you press that button on the rail." He pointed to a small red button on the side of the hospital-grade bed frame I was lying in. "Where are you going?" I asked. I hated that I asked. I should have wanted him to leave. He was the danger. He was the reason I had a hole in my side. But the room felt impossibly big and scary without him. "I have work to do," he said. His voice was cold, detached. "I have to clean up my mess." He turned and walked toward the heavy oak door. "Kaylin," I called out. He stopped, his hand on the brass knob. He didn't turn around. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you come in tonight? You never come in. You always stay in the car." "Why tonight?" He stood there for a long moment. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he spoke. His voice so low I almost didn't catch it. "Because I was tired of watching," he said. He opened the door and walked out, leaving me alone in the silence of the estate, trapped in a gilded cage with a wound in my side and a very dangerous man in my head.
Chapter 3. Kaylin. I stood on the stone balcony overlooking the East Gardens. The night air was biting, damp with the rain that had finally stopped falling, but I didn't feel the cold. I felt only the heat of the rage simmering under my skin. I took a drag from a cigarette. I hadn't smoked in 2 years. I quit the day I took over the legitimate side of the family business because board members didn't like the smell of smoke on a CEO's suit. But tonight I needed the burn. I needed the nicotine to steady my hands. They were still shaking. Just a fraction. A tremor that no one else would notice, but I felt it deep in the muscles of my forearms. It was the adrenaline crash. The aftermath of holding a dying girl in my arms and praying to a God I stopped believing in years ago. "You're making a mistake." I didn't turn around. I knew the sound of those footsteps. Heavy, measured, expensive Italian leather on marble. "Father," I said, blowing a stream of gray smoke into the darkness. Nikolai Kovac stepped up beside me. He was an older, harder version of me. The same dark hair, though his was streaked with silver. The same jawline, though his was softened by age and too much scotch. He was wearing his silk robe, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked like the lord of the manor. He looked like a man who hadn't just almost lost his only son. "The girl," he said. "It is messy, Kaylin." "She has a name," I said. "Ilara. She is a civilian, a waitress, and now she is a witness to an assassination attempt on the air. She didn't see anything. I covered her. She saw enough." My father took a sip of his drink, staring out at the manicured hedges. He looked bored. That was the thing about Nikolai. Violence didn't faze him. Collateral damage was just a line item on a spreadsheet. "Pay her off," he said calmly. 50,000. That should cover her medical bills and buy her silence. Get her out of the estate tonight. Put her in a private clinic if you must, but get her out of my house. She is a liability." I laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. 50,000? I asked. Is that the going rate for a bullet wound these days? It is generous for a girl who pours coffee for minimum wage. I turned on him then. I flicked the cigarette over the balcony railing, watching the cherry ember fall into the darkness like a dying star. "She isn't going anywhere," I said. Nikolai turned his head slowly to look at me. His eyes were cold chips of ice. "Excuse me?" "She stays," I said. I stepped closer to him. I was taller than him now, broader. I used that size, letting my shadow fall over him. "She stays until she is healed. She stays until I know who ordered the hit. And if you try to move her, if you try to threaten her or buy her off, I will burn this city to the ground. And I will start with this house." My father's expression didn't change, but the air around us grew heavy. This was the dance we did. The old lion and the young lion circling each other. He wanted me to be ruthless. He wanted me to be him. But he hated it when I turned that ruthlessness against him. "You are thinking with your dick," he said disdainfully. "It makes you weak." "I am thinking with my honor," I snapped. "I brought the war to her job. I am responsible for her blood. That makes her mine to deal with." He scoffed. "You are obsessed. I have seen the reports. The driver logs. You go to that bakery every night. You think I don't know? You think I don't watch you?" I stiffened. Of course he knew. Nothing happened in this family without Nikolai knowing. "Then you know I won't change my mind," I said. He stared at me for a long moment, searching for a crack in my armor. He wouldn't find one. "Not tonight." "Fine," he said, turning back to the gardens. "Keep your pet. But when the wolves come for her, and they will come, do not expect me to save her." "I don't need you to save her," I said. "That is my job." I walked away before I did something treasonous, like punch the Don in the jaw. I moved through the hallways of the estate. It was a mausoleum of a house. Big, cold, empty. It was filled with priceless art and antique furniture, but it had never felt like a home. It felt like a fortress. And now, I had brought Ilara into the dungeon. I stopped outside the door to the medical wing. I took a deep breath, trying to scrub the anger from my face. I checked my shirt. I had changed out of the bloody suit jacket, but I was still wearing the white dress shirt. The blood on the cuff had dried to a rust color. I rolled the sleeves up higher to hide it. I pushed the door open quietly. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors and a small lamp in the corner. I thought she might be asleep. The doctor had given her enough pain medication to knock out a horse. But she wasn't asleep. Ilara was lying on her back, staring up at the intricate crown molding on the ceiling. Her face was pale, almost translucent against the dark pillows. She looked small, frail. I hated it. I hated seeing her like this. In the bakery, she was vibrant. She was always moving, always doing something with her hands. Now she was still. Broken. I walked into the room. "You should be sleeping," I said softly. She didn't jump. She didn't look at me. She just kept staring at the ceiling. "The drugs make my head spin," she whispered, "but they don't turn off my brain." I pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. The leather creaked. "How is the pain?" "Manageable." She turned her head then. Her eyes were glassy, dilated from the meds, but there was a sharpness behind them, a clarity that unsettled me. She looked at me. She looked at the rolled-up sleeves of my shirt. She looked at my hands, resting on my knees. "You know about Barnaby," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I froze. I had slipped up earlier. In my panic, in my desperation to keep her calm, I had told her the cat was fed. I had revealed a card I wasn't supposed to be holding. "Yes," I said. "And, you know I live on 4th Street." "Yes, and you know about the groceries and the car I'm saving for." I took a breath. There was no point in lying. The truth was ugly, but it was all I had left to give her. "I know," I said. "How?" she asked. Her voice cracked. "How do you know all that, Kaylin?" "We never talk. You come in, you order coffee, you leave. How do you know about my life?" I looked down at my hands. They were large, capable of violence, capable of ending life. I hated that they had failed to protect her. "I watched you," I said. She made a small sound in the back of her throat. A whimper. "Why?" I looked up, meeting her gaze. I owed her this. I owed her the unvarnished, creepy truth. Because 6 months ago I buried my mother, I said. The funeral was a circus. Press, rivals, federal agents taking photos. I felt like I was suffocating. I told the driver to just drive. I didn't care where. We ended up in your neighborhood. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. We stopped at a red light in front of your shop. It was late, raining, and there you were. You were taking a tray of muffins out of the oven. You burned your finger and you laughed. You put your finger in your mouth and you did a little dance while you waited for the heat to fade. Ilara stared at me, her mouth slightly open. I watched you, I continued, my voice low. You looked happy. You looked real. In my world, everyone wears a mask. Everyone wants something. Everyone is plotting. But you were just baking. You were alive. So you came back, she whispered. Every night, I admitted, it became the only part of my day that made sense. I sat in the car, and I watched you live your life. I watched you walk home. I watched you feed that ugly cat. I watched you count your tips. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. You were the only clean thing in my dirty life, Ilara. Watching you, it was like looking through a window at a world I could never touch, a world where things were simple. She shivered. I didn't know if it was from cold or from fear. You stalked me, she said. You learned my schedule, you learned my habits. I protected you, I argued, though I knew it was a weak defense. I made sure no one bothered you on your walk home. I had my guys scare off the drug dealers on your corner. I kept you safe. Safe? She let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. She winced as the movement pulled at her stitches. She gestured to her bandaged side. You call this safe? I flinched. If you were watching, she said, tears welling in her eyes. If you knew everything, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you see them coming? The question hit me like a physical blow. It was the question I had been asking myself for 3 hours. I closed my eyes, the guilt washing over me like acid. Because I broke the routine, I whispered. I opened my eyes and looked at her. I broke the rule. I wasn't supposed to go in. I was supposed to stay in the car, behind the bulletproof glass. I was supposed to keep the window closed. But tonight the noise in my head was too loud. The pressure was too much. I needed to be close to you. I needed to hear your voice. I reached out, but I stopped myself before I touched the sheet. I was selfish, Ilara. I was arrogant. I thought I could step into your world for 5 minutes and steal a little bit of your peace. I didn't check the perimeter. I didn't wait for the scout report. I just walked in. I looked at the bandage on her side. I led them right to you, I said. I was the beacon. They were tracking me, and I led them straight to the only thing I care about. The silence in the room was deafening. The monitor beeped steadily, marking the time. Ilara looked at me. Her expression was unreadable. She looked terrified, yes, but she also looked confused. You care about me? She asked softly. You don't even know me. I know you, I said fiercely. I know you hate the rain, but you walk in it anyway. I know you sing when you think no one is listening. I know you saved the broken cookies for the stray dog in the alley. I stood up, unable to sit still under the weight of her gaze. I walked to the window, looking out at the darkness. I know enough, I said. I know enough to know that I ruined you. I heard the rustle of sheets. So what happens now? She asked. Now, I said, turning back to face her. Now I fix it. I find the men who did this. I find the person who sold me out, and I end them. And me? She asked. You heal, I said. You stay here behind these walls where no one can touch you. And then? And then, I said, my voice heavy with the lie I was telling myself. And then I let you go. I send you back to your life, and I never come back to that bakery again. She watched me. She didn't believe me. I didn't believe me either, because now that I had touched her, now that I had smelled her blood and held her in my arms, the idea of letting her go felt like cutting out my own heart. Get some sleep, Ilara, I said. I walked to the door, my hand lingering on the switch. Kaylin? She said. I paused. Thank you, she whispered. I frowned, turning my head. For what? For saving me. I stared at her. She was thanking the man who put a bullet in her side. It was twisted. It was wrong. It made me want to fall to my knees and beg for her forgiveness. Don't thank me, I said roughly. Save your thanks for when you survive me. I flipped the switch, plunging the room into darkness, and walked out into the cold hallway, leaving the only light I had ever known behind a closed door.
Chapter 4. Ilara. 2 weeks is a long time to stare at the same damask wallpaper. It's enough time to count the pattern repeats. 14 fleur-de-lis from the floor to the crown molding. It's enough time to memorize the way the light shifts across the room as the sun moves from east to west, slicing through the heavy velvet curtains. And it is definitely enough time to get used to the devil sitting in the corner. I shifted in the bed, wincing as the movement pulled at the healing skin on my side. The sharp, tearing pain from the first few days had faded into a dull, maddening itch. The doctor said it was a good sign. It meant the tissue was knitting back together. To me, it just felt like ants crawling under my skin. I let out a frustrated sigh and punched my pillow, trying to find a comfortable angle. Stop fidgeting, a deep voice rumbled from the corner. You will irritate the wound. I turned my head. Kaylin was sitting in a high-backed leather armchair he had dragged in from the library. He had turned my recovery room into his command center. There was a sleek laptop balanced on his knees, a stack of files on the small table beside him, and a stark phone that lit up every 30 seconds with a new disaster. I'm not fidgeting, I lied. I'm adjusting. There's a difference. He didn't look up from the screen. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He typed with a kind of controlled violence, like he was punishing the keys. You are bored, he said. I am a prisoner, I countered. You are a guest, he corrected. I snorted. Guests are allowed to leave. Guests can go for a walk. Guests can go to the bathroom without a nurse hovering outside the door like a gargoyle. Kaylin finally stopped typing. He closed the laptop with a snap and looked at me. He looked exhausted. In the 2 weeks I had been here, I wasn't sure I had seen him sleep. He was always there when I woke up, and he was always there when I drifted off. The dark circles under his eyes were bruising, stark against his pale skin. He had stopped wearing the pristine suit jackets, trading them for button-down shirts with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and inked with faint, dark tattoos I couldn't quite make out from this distance. I am keeping you alive, Ilara, he said calmly. Being bored is a small price to pay for breathing. I hated when he used logic. I hated that he was right. I slumped back against the pillows. I want to go home, Kaylin. I know. I want to see my cat. I had Barnaby brought to the estate, he said. He is currently terrorizing the kitchen staff. The cook gave him fresh salmon this morning. He lives better than I do. I blinked. You brought my cat here? You wouldn't stop asking about him, he said, rubbing a hand over his face. The roughness of his stubble made a scratching sound. And I was tired of you worrying. I felt a warmth bloom in my chest that had nothing to do with the fever I'd run last week. It was dangerous, this warmth. It was the feeling of being seen, being cared for. "Thank you," I whispered. He waved a hand dismissively, standing up. He stretched, his back popping audibly, and walked over to the side table where a silver coffee service sat. "Coffee?" he asked. "Please." I watched him pour. It was such a domestic task for a man who looked like he could snap a neck with one hand. He poured the dark liquid into a delicate china cup. Then, without asking, he reached for the sugar bowl. 1, 2 spoons, then a splash of heavy cream. He stirred it, the spoon clinking softly against the porcelain, and brought it over to me. He handed it to me, handle facing my right hand, so I wouldn't have to twist my injured side. I took a sip. It was perfect. Exactly how I made it for myself at the bakery at 4 a.m. 2 sugars, dash of cream. Not milk, cream. I lowered the cup, staring at him over the rim. "You know how I take my coffee?" I said quietly. He sat on the edge of the bed. It was a boundary he rarely crossed. Usually he stayed in his chair, in his corner. But today he seemed heavier, drawn to the comfort of the mattress. "I told you," he said, his voice low. "I watched you." "It's unnerving," I admitted. "It's thorough," he countered. "It's both." He cracked a smile. It was a rare thing, a flash of white teeth that transformed his harsh face into something devastatingly handsome. It made my breath hitch. I realized then that I was in trouble. Big trouble. It wasn't just that I was trapped in a Mafia estate with a gunshot wound, it was that I was trapped with him. For 2 weeks, he had been my nurse, my guard, and my only companion. He read to me when the painkillers made the words swim on the page of my book. He held my hair back once when the antibiotics made me sick. He listened to me ramble about culinary school, about the specific chemistry of sourdough starter, about how much I hated the rain. He listened like I was explaining the secrets of the universe. "Why are you still here?" I asked, placing the coffee cup on the nightstand. He frowned. "I live here." "No, I mean, here, in this room." "You have a whole empire to run, Kaylin. Don't you have an office? Don't you have minions to do this? Why are you babysitting me?" He looked down at his hands. They were resting on his thighs, large and scarred. "My father's office is downstairs," he said. "It smells like cigars and judgment. The war room is in the basement. It smells like blood and bad decisions." He looked up at me, his eyes dark and unguarded for the first time. "This is the only quiet room in the house," he said. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was always set, as if he was bracing for a blow. "You hate it, don't you?" I asked softly. He stiffened. "Hate what?" "This. The life. The business. Being the prince." Kaylin looked away, staring at the window where the afternoon sun was fading into twilight. "It is not a matter of hate or love, Ilara. It is a matter of blood. I was born into this. It is in my DNA." "You could leave," I suggested. It was a naive thing to say, I knew that, but I wanted to say it. He laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "Leave? And go where?" "There is no retirement plan in this life. You leave in a box or you don't leave at all." He turned back to me, his expression intense. "Besides, if I leave, who keeps the monsters at bay? My father is getting old. He is ruthless, but he is losing his edge. My cousin is a psychopath who would sell the city for parts. If I don't take the throne, this city burns." "So you are a martyr," I said. "I am a dam," he corrected. "I hold back the flood." He looked so lonely then. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world on a spine that was slowly fracturing. I didn't think. I just moved. I reached out with my left hand and covered his. His skin was warm, his knuckles rough. He flinched at the contact, his whole body going rigid, as if I had burned him. But he didn't pull away. He looked down at our hands, my pale, slender fingers resting against his large, tanned ones. The contrast was stark. You aren't a monster, Kaylin? I whispered. He looked up, his gaze locking onto mine. The hunger in his eyes hit me like a physical wave. It wasn't just desire, though, that was there, hot and heavy. It was a starvation, a desperate, clawing need for something soft, something real. You don't know what I am, he rasped. You see me bringing you coffee and reading you poetry? You don't see what I do when I leave this room. You don't see the blood on my hands. I see you, I argued. I see the man who jumped over a counter to save a girl he didn't know anything to. I see the man who brought my cat here because he knew I was worried. That man is a liar, he said harshly. That man is trying to trick you. Then trick me, I challenged. The air between us charged with electricity. It hummed in my ears, drowning out the beep of the monitor. Kaylin leaned in. Just an inch. Then another. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with mine. His grip was tight, bordering on painful, but I didn't pull away. I squeezed back. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. I could feel the heat radiating off him. I could smell the scent of him. Soap, starch, and the faint, underlying scent of smoke. My heart hammered against my ribs, aching in my chest. I wanted him to kiss me. God, I wanted him to kiss me. It was insane. It was stupid, but I wanted to taste the darkness he carried. Ilara, he breathed. His voice was a vibration against my skin. He lifted his other hand, his fingers grazing my jawline. His touch was feather-light, reverent. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, dragging it down slightly. I parted my lips, a soft exhale escaping me. His eyes dropped to my mouth. His pupils blew wide, swallowing the hazel. He looked like he was about to consume me. I shouldn't, he murmured, more to himself than to me. I am poison, Ilara. I will make you sick. I'm already shot, I whispered. How much worse can it get? A groan rumbled in his chest. He tilted his head, closing the distance. Our noses brushed. I closed my eyes, tilting my chin up, waiting for the contact. And then he pulled back. It was abrupt, violent. He ripped his hand from mine and stood up, putting 3 feet of distance between us in a second. I opened my eyes, blinking in the sudden loss of warmth. Kaylin stood by the window, his back to me. His hands were braced on the sill, his shoulders heaving as he took deep, ragged breaths. I can't, he choked out. Kaylin? No, he cut me off, his voice hard again. No. I am trying to be noble here, Ilara. I am trying to do one decent thing in my miserable life. I am trying to get you healed so I can get you out of here. If I touch you, if I start this, I won't let you go. He turned around. His face was a mask of anguish. And you need to go, he said. You need to get as far away from me as possible. I stared at him, my hand still tingling where he had held it. I felt rejected, yes. But more than that, I felt a strange, fierce anger. You don't get to decide what I need, I said, my voice shaking. I do, he countered, because I am the one with the power. I am the one with the guns, and right now I am telling you that you are unsafe, not just from my enemies, from me. He walked to the door, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. I have a meeting, he said, not looking at me. The nurse will bring your dinner. He didn't wait for a response. He walked out, slamming the heavy door behind him. I sat there in the silence, staring at the closed door. My side throbbed. My heart ached. He thought he was saving me. He thought he was being the hero by pushing me away. But looking at the empty chair in the corner, at the cold cup of coffee on the nightstand, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to be saved. Not if it meant being without him. I laid back against the pillows, tracing the rim of the cup with my finger. 2 sugars. Dash of cream. He knew me. And whether he liked it or not, I was starting to know him too. and I wasn't going to let him push me away that easily.
Chapter 5. Kaylin. She was healing too fast. I watched Ilara walk across the east garden from the window of my father's study. Her limp was gone. The hand she pressed against her side was more out of habit than necessity now. She paused by the rose bushes, tilting her face up to the sun, looking like a creature made of light in a world built on shadows. I hated that she was getting better. It was a sick thought. A selfish, twisted thought that belonged to the monster Ilara swore I wasn't. But as long as she was hurt, she had to stay. As long as she was recovering, I had an excuse to keep her behind these walls under my roof, where I could see her breathing. Once she was healed, she was free, and freedom meant danger. A polite cough drew my attention back to the room. Silvio, the consigliere, was sitting opposite me. He was a man who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. He had served my father for 30 years, and he looked at me like I was a golden retriever puppy he was waiting to euthanize. "The men are talking, Kaylin," Silvio said. He adjusted his silk tie. It was a subtle movement, precise. Everything about Silvio was precise. "Let them talk," I said, turning away from the window. Soldiers always talk. It keeps them from getting bored between shifts. "They aren't talking about sports or women," Silvio corrected gently. "They are talking about the girl, the civilian." I sat down in the leather chair behind the massive oak desk. It wasn't my desk. It was my father's. But he was out at a meeting with the Port Authority, so I was holding court. "What are they saying?" I asked, my voice low. "They are saying you have lost your focus. They are saying you are playing house with a stray dog while the Rossi family sharpens their knives." I leaned forward. "Let me be clear, Silvio. The girl is a witness. She is a liability I am managing." "She is a pet," Silvio said. The word hung in the air, ugly and diminishing. I felt the rage spike in my blood, hot and fast. I wanted to reach across the desk and wrap my hands around his throat. I wanted to squeeze until that polite smile vanished. "Careful," I warned. Silvio didn't flinch. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I am only telling you what the streets are saying, Kaylin. A prince who is distracted by a pretty face is a prince who can be toppled. The Rossi family smells blood in the water. If you want to lead this family, you cannot have weaknesses. And right now, she is a glowing neon sign pointing directly to your heart." He stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. "Get rid of her, Kaylin, before someone else does it for you." He walked out, leaving the threat hanging in the heavy air of the study. I sat there for a long time, listening to the grandfather clock tick. I looked out the window again, but Ilara was gone. The garden was empty. Silvio was right. Not about her being a pet, but about her being a target. As long as she was here, she was a pawn in a game she didn't know how to play. My father tolerated her because I threatened him. The men tolerated her because they feared me. But tolerance has a shelf life, and ours had just expired. I had to let her go. The thought made my chest ache. It felt like tearing off a limb, but if I kept her, I would get her killed. The bakery was just the warning shot. Next time, they wouldn't miss. I stood up. I needed to do this now, before I lost my nerve. I found her in the library. She was running her hand along the spines of the old books, looking bored. She was wearing leggings and one of my hoodies that she had stolen from the laundry. It swallowed her whole. She looked tiny, vulnerable. "Come with me," I said. She jumped, turning around. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, and that simple, honest joy felt like a knife in my gut. "Where?" she asked. The gym. She frowned. The gym? Kaylin, I'm not exactly ready for CrossFit. I'm not asking you to lift weights. Come on. I turned and walked away, needing her to follow. If I looked at her too long, I would cave. I would lock the doors and keep her here forever. We walked in silence to the detached building that housed the estate's training facility. It was a stark contrast to the main house. No velvet, no wood. Just concrete, steel, and the smell of sweat and rubber. I flipped on the lights. The fluorescent hum filled the space. "Why are we here?" Ilara asked, hugging her arms around her chest. I walked over to the mats in the center of the room. I took off my jacket and tossed it onto a bench. I rolled up my sleeves. "Because you are leaving," I said. She froze. "What?" "You are healed," I said, keeping my voice flat. "You can walk. You can move. There is no reason for you to be here anymore." She looked like I had slapped her. Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked rapidly. "Oh, I didn't realize. Today?" "Today," I confirmed. "But before you go, I am going to give you something." "Money?" she asked bitterly. "Your father offered me 50,000. Is that the severance package?" I ignored the jab. "No. I'm going to teach you how to stay alive." I walked over to her. She looked wary, backing up a step. "I can't teach you to fight in an hour," I said. "And with your side healing, you can't take a hit. But I can teach you how to get away. I can teach you how to break a hold. I don't need—" "Yes, you do," I snapped, my control frayed. "The world is dangerous, Ilara, and I have painted a target on your back. People might come for you because of me. You need to know what to do." She stared at me, her chest heaving. She looked angry, hurt, and terrified. "Fine," she whispered. "Teach me." I moved into her space. "I want you to imagine someone grabs you from behind," I said. I stepped around her. My chest brushed her back. I felt her shiver. I wrapped my arms around her, pinning her arms to her sides. I was careful not to squeeze her ribs, but I made the hold firm. I trapped her. "They have you," I murmured, my mouth close to her ear. "They are bigger than you, stronger. Struggling just wastes energy. You can't outmuscle them." I could feel her heart hammering against my forearm. She was warm, soft. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to hold her tighter, to bury my face in her neck and never let go. "So what do I do?" she asked, her voice breathless. "You use pain," I said. "You use surprise." I guided her movements. "Shift your weight," I instructed. "Drop your center of gravity. Good. Now stomp, hard. Aim for the instep. Break the small bones in the foot." She stomped. It was tentative. "Harder," I ordered, meaner. "Imagine it's me. Imagine I'm the one hurting you." She stomped again, harder this time. Good. Now, the elbow. I moved my head back, giving her space. "Drive your elbow back. Aim for the gut or the ribs. If they are close enough, aim for the throat." She drove her elbow back. It thumped against my stomach. My abs absorbed it easily, but the form was good. "Again," I said. She did it again, again. We fell into a rhythm. Grab, stomp, strike, release. The air in the gym grew heavy. It was thick with heat and sweat and the undeniable tension stretching between us. I grabbed her again, tighter this time. "Don't let me hold you," I growled. "Fight me, Ilara." She stomped on my foot, hard enough that I actually felt it through my boot. She slammed her elbow back. She twisted. She broke the hold. She spun around to face me, breathing hard. Her hair had come loose from her ponytail. Her cheeks were flushed pink. She looked fierce. She looked beautiful. I stood there, my hands empty, my chest heaving. "Good," I said roughly. That was good. She didn't back away. She took a step toward me. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "I told you. I need you to be safe." "No." "Why are you pushing me away?" "Because I have to," I yelled. The shout echoed off the concrete walls. I paced away from her, running my hands through my hair. I felt like a caged animal. "Silvio is right," I said, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You make me weak." She flinched. I stared at the floor. "When you are here, I don't think about the business. I don't think about the war. I think about you. I think about how you take your coffee. I think about how soft your skin is. I think about stripping that hoodie off you and finding out if you have freckles anywhere else." I looked up at her. Her eyes were wide, dark pools. "I am a liability to this family as long as you are my distraction," I said. "And you are a dead woman walking if you stay near me." I walked back to her. I couldn't stop myself. I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame, knowing it would burn. I stopped inches from her. I reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. My hand lingered on her jaw. "I want to keep you," I whispered. "I want to lock you in my tower and throw away the key. I want to ruin you for anyone else." "Kaylin," she breathed. She leaned into my touch. She turned her face, pressing a kiss to the center of my palm. The sensation shattered me. It was so trusting, so intimate. I grabbed the back of her neck. I pulled her to me. Our bodies collided. My other hand gripped her waist, careful of her wound, but desperate to feel her against me. I lowered my head. Her lips parted. She let out a small, needy sound that went straight to my groin. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to devour her. I wanted to claim her so thoroughly that she would never be able to leave. I hovered there, our breath mingling. I could taste her. Vanilla and mint. "Kiss me," she whispered. The plea nearly broke me, but then I saw it. The bruise on her wrist from the IV, the stiffness in the way she held her side. I had done that, and if I kissed her now, if I took this, I would never have the strength to let her go. And the next time she got hurt, it wouldn't be a graze. It would be a coffin. "I can't," I choked out. I tore myself away from her. It took every ounce of physical strength I possessed. I stepped back, my hands shaking. "The car is waiting at the front," I said. My voice was cold, dead. It wasn't my voice. It was the prince's voice. "Kaylin." "Go, Ilara." She stared at me. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked devastated. Then her expression hardened. She lifted her chin. She pulled the dignity around her like a cloak. "Goodbye, Kaylin," she said. She turned and walked out of the gym. She didn't look back. I watched her go. I watched the door swing shut behind her. And then I turned and punched the heavy bag so hard the chain snapped. It crashed to the floor with a dull thud. I stood there in the silence, my knuckles bleeding, my chest hollow. She was safe. She was gone. I had done the right thing. So why did it feel like I had just made the biggest mistake of my life?
Chapter 6. Ilara. My apartment smelled like stale air and dust. I stood in the doorway, my key still clutched in my hand, staring at the space that used to feel like my sanctuary. It was a studio on the 4th floor of a walk-up that had seen better decades, let alone days. The linoleum in the kitchenette was peeling at the corners. The window had a draft that whistled when the wind picked up. The couch was a hand-me-down from a neighbor who had moved to Florida. Before the bakery exploded, this place was my independence. It was proof that I was making it on my own. Now it just looked small and unsafe. I stepped inside and closed the door. I reached for the lock, but my hand hesitated. The old, flimsy deadbolt was gone. In its place was a heavy, brushed steel mechanism that looked like it belonged on a bank vault, not a pre-war apartment door. There was a keypad above the handle and a reinforcement plate drilled into the frame. I ran my thumb over the cold metal. Kaylin. He hadn't just dropped me off at the curb like a bag of laundry. He had sent a team ahead. They had fortified my tiny life while I was busy getting my heart broken in his gym. I locked the door. The thud of the bolt sliding home was heavy. Final. I walked further into the room. There was a small black dome mounted in the corner of the ceiling near the entrance. A camera. I checked the window. New latches. Sensors. I wasn't free. I was just in a different cage. I sat down on the edge of my lumpy mattress and buried my face in my hands. Barnaby, my traitorous cat, rubbed against my ankles, purring loud enough to rattle his ribs. He had arrived an hour before me, delivered in a luxury pet carrier that probably cost more than my rent. He looked fatter. Even my cat preferred the Mafia lifestyle. I hate him, I whispered to the empty room. It was a lie. A terrible, jagged lie. I didn't hate Kaylin. I missed him. I missed the way he smelled like sandalwood and smoke. I missed the way he sat in the corner of the room, guarding me while I slept. I missed the way he looked at me, like I was something rare and precious, right up until the moment he decided I was a liability and threw me away. You make me weak. His words echoed in my head, bouncing off the peeling paint. I lay back on the bed, wincing as my side pulled. I pulled up my shirt to look at the bandage. Underneath, the angry red line of the incision was healing, knitting together into a puckered pink scar. It was ugly. It was a permanent brand. A reminder that I had flown too close to the sun and gotten burned. A month passed in a blur of gray days. I went back to work, but it wasn't the same. The bakery had reopened. Kaylin's anonymous donation had paid for the repairs, and then some. The new glass was reinforced. There were security guards who pretended to be customers, sitting by the door with earpieces they tried to hide. I ignored them. I ignored the black SUV that sometimes drove past, slowly but never stopped. I focused on the dough, kneading, rolling, baking. But my side ached when I lifted the heavy flour sacks. I tired easily. And every time the bell chimed, I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat, hoping it was him, fearing it was him. It never was. He had kept his word. He was staying away. By the fourth Friday, I was climbing the walls. The silence in my apartment was deafening. The security camera blinking in the corner felt like a judgment. I needed to get out. I needed to feel like a person again, not a patient or a victim. I called Sarah. She was a barista at the coffee shop down the street, loud and fun and delightfully uncomplicated. "We are going out," I told her. "Finally!" she screamed into the phone. "I thought you died or joined a convent. Wear something hot. We are going to the Rusty Anchor." The Rusty Anchor was a dive bar 3 blocks over. It smelled like bleach and bad decisions. It was perfect. I stood in front of my warped full-length mirror and made a choice. I pulled a dress from the back of my closet. I had bought it at a thrift store 2 years ago and never worn it because it felt too bold. Too much. It was a slip dress, deep emerald green silk that skimmed my body like water. It had thin straps and a low back. It showed the bruise on my hip that was fading to yellow. It didn't hide the bandage on my side, but I didn't care. I put on heels. I put on dark lipstick. I looked at myself. I looked dangerous. I looked like a woman who wasn't waiting for a prince to save her. "Let's do this," I said. The bar was crowded, loud, and sticky. The air was thick with the smell of hops and sweat. A month ago, I would have hated it. Tonight, I welcomed the noise. It drowned out the thoughts in my head. Sarah was already at the bar, waving me over. We ordered shots of tequila that tasted like gasoline. We danced to music that was too bass-heavy. We laughed at things that weren't funny. For an hour, I felt normal. Then he sat down next to me. He was a guy. Just a guy. Flannel shirt, beard, eyes that were a little too glazed. He slid onto the stool beside me while Sarah was in the bathroom. "Buy you a drink?" He slurred. "No thanks," I said, shouting to be heard over the music. "I'm good." "Come on, sweetheart, just one drink." "You look lonely." "I'm not lonely," I said, turning my back to him. "I'm waiting for a friend." He didn't take the hint. He leaned in closer, his breath hot and smelling of cheap beer against my neck. "You're too pretty to be here alone," he muttered. I stiffened. I scanned the room for Sarah, but she was nowhere to be seen. I scanned the room for something else. Instinctively, I looked for the shadows. I looked for the guards. But this wasn't the bakery. This was just a bar. I was on my own. The guy's hand landed on my waist. It was heavy and presumptive. His fingers dug into the soft flesh of my side, right on the scar. Pain flared, sharp and sudden. I gasped, flinching away, violently. "Don't touch me," I snapped. He laughed, tightening his grip. "Relax. You're tense. What's this? A bandage? You get into a catfight?" He pressed his thumb into the wound. It hurt. It hurt bad. But more than the pain, it was the violation. That scar was mine. It was the memory of the worst night of my life. And the best. It was where Kaylin had saved me. "Get off me." I shoved his chest, but he was heavy and anchored to the stool. "Hey, don't be a bitch," he sneered. "I'm just being nice." The air in the bar changed. It wasn't a sound. The music didn't stop. The people didn't stop talking. But the temperature dropped 10 degrees. The hairs on my arms stood up. I looked toward the door. Kaylin was there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing black jeans and a black t-shirt that clung to his chest, with a leather jacket open over it. He looked lethal. He looked like a dark god who had descended from Olympus to burn the world. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He wasn't looking at the bartender. His eyes were locked on the stranger's hand on my waist. I stopped breathing. Kaylin didn't walk. He stalked. He cut through the crowd like a shark through water. People instinctively moved out of his way, sensing the violence radiating off him in waves. The guy next to me didn't notice. He was too busy leaning in, trying to whisper something gross in my ear. He never got the chance. 1 second, the guy was sitting there. The next, he was flying backward. Kaylin had grabbed him by the back of his flannel collar and yanked him off the stool with terrifying ease. The guy crashed into a table behind us, sending glasses shattering to the floor. The bar went silent. The music seemed to stutter. The guy scrambled up, looking confused and angry. "Hey, what the hell, man?" Kaylin stepped into his space. He didn't shout. He didn't roar. He was deadly calm. "Touch her again," Kaylin said, his voice low and vibrating with a dark promise. "And I will remove your hand at the wrist." The guy blinked. He looked at Kaylin's face. The dead eyes, the set jaw, the sheer size of him, and his survival instincts finally kicked in. He paled. He looked at me, then back at Kaylin. I didn't know she was with you," he stammered. "She isn't with me," Kaylin said. "She is mine. There is a difference. Get out." The guy didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled toward the exit, nearly tripping over his own feet in his haste to get away from the predator in the leather jacket. Kaylin watched him go, his chest heaving. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Slowly he turned to face me. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I should have been angry. I should have been furious that he was here, ruining my night, claiming ownership of me like I was a piece of property. But all I felt was relief. And heat. He looked at me. He looked at the green silk dress. He looked at the exposed skin of my back, the lipstick on my mouth. His jaw ticked. What are you doing here? He rasped. I slid off the stool, standing my ground. I stood tall in my heels, though I still had to look up at him. I'm having a drink, I said. It's a free country, Kaylin. You are testing me, he said. Testing you? I laughed, but it sounded breathless. I haven't seen you in a month. You dumped me, remember? You sent me away for my own good. I sent you away to keep you safe. He growled, stepping closer. He invaded my personal space, boxing me in against the bar. And look at you. You are in a dive bar on the edge of Rossi territory, wearing a dress that is basically an invitation for trouble, letting some drunk touch you. He touched me, I argued. I didn't let him. He touched the wound, Kaylin said. His eyes dropped to my waist. I saw him. He pressed on it. His voice broke on the last word. He reached out, his hand hovering over my side, shaking slightly. Did he hurt you? I stared at him. The anger in his eyes was fading, replaced by that familiar, devastating worry. Yes, I whispered. A growl rumbled in his chest. I tried, Ilara, he said. He sounded desperate. I stayed away. I watched the cameras. I let you have your space. But I can't do this. I can't watch some random idiot put his hands on you. Then stop watching, I shouted, pushing against his chest. I can't, he roared back. The bar was staring. I didn't care. You say I make you weak? I said, tears stinging my eyes. You say I'm a liability. So you leave me alone in that apartment with nothing but locks and cameras to keep me company. You think that's saving me? It's lonely, Kaylin. It's miserable. I grabbed the lapels of his leather jacket and yanked him down. I would rather be in danger with you than safe without you. Kaylin froze. He stared at me, his expression shattering. You don't mean that, he whispered. I do. I am tired of being sensible. I am tired of being afraid. I looked at his mouth. Take me home, Kaylin. Something snapped in him. I saw it happen. The restraint, the nobility, the walls he had built, they all crumbled. He grabbed my hand. His grip was iron. Let's go. He didn't wait for me to close my tab. He didn't wait for Sarah. Sorry, Sarah. He dragged me toward the back exit, kicking the door open. We spilled out into the alleyway. The air was cool and smelled of rain. He didn't stop. He marched me to a sleek black sports car parked by the dumpster, not the SUV. This was his car, his escape. He opened the passenger door and practically shoved me inside. He slammed it shut and rounded the hood, sliding into the driver's seat. He started the engine. It roared to life, a deep, guttural growl that matched the man driving it. He peeled out of the alley, tires screeching. Where are we going? I asked, my pulse racing. Not your apartment, he said, gripping the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. I'm done with that place. Then where? My penthouse, he said. He glanced at me. His eyes were dark, hungry, and full of a terrifying possessiveness. And this time I'm not letting you leave.
Chapter 7. Kaylin. I drove like I was trying to outrun my own shadow. The speedometer climbed past 90 as we tore down the highway, the city lights blurring into streaks of neon violence against the dark glass of the windshield. My knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel. I could feel the leather groaning under my grip, threatening to tear, just like my restraint. Beside me, Ilara was silent. She wasn't cowering. She wasn't crying. She was sitting perfectly still, staring out the window, her jaw set in a line of stubborn defiance that made me want to shake her and kiss her until she forgot her own name. I risked a glance at her. The streetlights slashed across her face, illuminating the sharp curve of her cheekbone, the dark lipstick that made her mouth look sinful, the pale column of her throat. She was wearing a green dress that was nothing but a scrap of silk and a prayer. It clung to every curve, exposing the creamy skin of her back, the slope of her shoulders. It was a dress made for sin, and she had worn it to a dive bar full of wolves. I tightened my grip on the wheel, the anger flaring hot and bright in my chest. It wasn't anger at her. Not really. It was anger at myself. I had tried. God, I had tried. For 30 days, I had lived like a monk. I had sat in my cold, empty penthouse and watched the grainy feed from the security cameras I installed in her hallway. I watched her leave for work. I watched her come home. I watched her struggle to open a jar of pasta sauce with her healing side, and I had nearly punched a hole in my wall because I wasn't there to open it for her. I stayed away because I was supposed to be the noble protector, the martyr, and tonight, that nobility had almost gotten her hurt. I saw the way that drunk touched her. I saw his filthy hand digging into her waist, right over the scar I had put there. I saw the flash of pain in her eyes, and I snapped. The tether I had kept on my beast broke. The distance I had placed between us evaporated. I took the exit for the city center, the tires screeching in protest. "You have a death wish," I rasped. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Rough, raw. Ilara didn't look at me. "I have a life wish," she countered, her voice steady. "There is a difference." "A life wish?" I scoffed. "Going to the Rusty Anchor without a detail?" "That isn't living, Ilara. That is suicide. Do you know whose territory that is? Do you know what they would have done to you if they knew who you were to me?" "I'm nothing to you," she shot back. "You made that very clear when you dumped me at my apartment and ghosted me for a month. I didn't ghost you. I was watching you." "That is worse," she yelled, finally turning to look at me. Her eyes were blazing. "That is so much worse, Kaylin." I pulled the car up to the curb of my building. It wasn't the estate. This was the spire, my sanctuary. 60 floors of glass and steel rising above the filth of the city. It was the only place I felt, like myself, and not just the dawn's sun. I killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was heavy, suffocating. I got out, slamming the door. I rounded the hood and ripped her door open. "Get out." She glared at me, but she slid out of the low seat. Her heels clicked on the pavement. She shivered in the cool night air, hugging her bare arms. I shrugged off my leather jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She tried to shrug it off. "Leave it," I ordered. She stopped fighting, pulling the lapels tighter. It smelled like me. Seeing her wrapped in my leather, her small frame swallowed by my scent, did something dangerous to my blood pressure. I grabbed her hand, her good hand, and dragged her toward the private entrance. We rode the elevator in silence. The numbers climbed. 10, 20, 40. The tension in the small metal box was thick enough to choke on. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the rapid beat of her heart. I could smell the cheap tequila she had been drinking, mixed with the vanilla scent of her skin. It was intoxicating. The doors slid open directly into the penthouse. I pulled her inside. The lights flickered on automatically, illuminating the stark, modern space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Black marble floors, white leather furniture. It was cold, impersonal. But tonight, with her standing in the middle of it in that green dress, it felt alive. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I punched in the code for the perimeter alarm. "There," I said, turning to face her. "You are safe. No one gets in here without my biometrics. No one touches you." She stood in the center of the living room, looking around. She looked out of place, a vibrant splash of color in my monochrome world. "So this is it?" she asked, her voice hollow. "I just moved from one cage to another, first the apartment, now the penthouse?" This isn't a cage, I said, walking toward her. This is a fortress. It feels the same from the inside. She turned to face me. She looked tired now. The adrenaline from the bar was fading, leaving her pale and fragile. I walked up to her, invading her space. I needed to check her side. The image of that man pressing his thumb into her scar was burned into my retinas. Let me see, I said. What? The wound. He touched it. I need to see if you're bleeding. I'm fine, she said, taking a step back. Ilara. No, she said firmly. You don't get to play doctor anymore. You don't get to act like you care about my health while you're actively breaking my heart. The words hit me like a physical blow. Breaking your heart? I repeated softly. She looked away, biting her lip. You think this has been easy for me? I asked. I took another step, cornering her against the back of the white sofa. You think I enjoyed staying away? It looked easy, she whispered. You didn't call. You didn't write, you just vanished. I didn't vanish, I growled. I was everywhere. Who do you think paid your rent this month? Who do you think fixed the streetlights on your block? Who do you think fired the creepy super who had the master key? Her head snapped up. You did that? I leaned in, bracing my hands on the back of the sofa on either side of her, trapping her. I did everything, I said intensely. My face was inches from hers. I spent every waking moment of the last 30 days making sure your world was perfect, making sure you didn't need me. Well, you failed, she said. Her voice shook. I froze. What? You failed, she repeated, because I still needed you. I stared at her. Her eyes were swimming with tears, but she held my gaze. She looked fierce and vulnerable and absolutely devastating. I hate my apartment, she said. It's too quiet. I hate the bakery guards because they aren't you. I hate that I look for your car every time I walk outside. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched my chest. Her palm rested over my heart, which was beating so hard I thought it might crack a rib. You stayed away to keep me alive, she whispered. But Kaylin, I felt like I was dying anyway. Something inside me snapped, the last thread of my control, the final brick in the wall I had built to keep her out. It all disintegrated. I let out a sound that was half groan, half growl. Ilara, I warned, my voice ragged. You need to stop. Why? Because I am hanging by a thread, I admitted. Because if you keep looking at me like that, I am going to forget all the reasons why I shouldn't touch you. Then forget them, she challenged. She stepped closer, closing the final inch of distance between our bodies. She tilted her chin up. Her lips parted. Stop protecting me, she whispered, and start wanting me. The invitation broke me. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I just reacted. I crashed my mouth onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss, it wasn't sweet, it was a collision. It was 30 days of starvation ending in a feast. It was anger and desperation and love, all tangled up in teeth and tongue. I wrapped my arms around her, crushing her to my chest. I lifted her off her feet, needing her closer, needing to feel every inch of her against me. She made a noise in the back of her throat, a whimper of surrender that drove me insane. Her arms went around my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me deeper. She tasted like tequila and salvation. I walked us backward, blindly, until my legs hit the coffee table. I didn't care. I kicked it out of the way. I moved toward the kitchen island, needing a surface, needing leverage. I sat her on the edge of the marble counter. I stepped between her legs, pressing my hips against hers. The friction was electric. I was hard, painfully so, straining against my jeans. I broke the kiss, gasping for air. We were both panting, our foreheads resting against each other. "Tell me to stop," I rasped. "Tell me to stop, Ilara, and I will walk out that door and never come back." She grabbed my face in her hands. She looked me dead in the eye. "Don't you dare," she said. That was it. Permission granted. Hell, permission demanded. I attacked her mouth again, kissing her jaw, her throat, the sensitive spot behind her ear. I shoved the leather jacket off her shoulders, letting it pool on the floor. My hands roamed over the green silk, memorizing the shape of her. My hand skimmed down her side, over the bump of the bandage beneath the fabric. I slowed, my touch turning gentle. "Does it hurt?" I murmured against her skin. "No," she gasped, her head thrown back. "Not when you touch it." I hated that scar. I hated that I put it there. But tonight I was going to worship it. I was going to rewrite the memory of pain with pleasure. I reached for the hem of her dress. "We aren't going back," I said, looking into her eyes. My voice was dark, possessive. "The apartment is done. The watching from the car is done." She nodded, her eyes dilated and dark. "Okay. You live here now," I said. "With me. In my bed. In my life. No more running. No more hiding." She wrapped her legs tighter around my waist, pulling me back in. "Okay," she whispered against my lips. I kissed her again, sealing the pact. I knew the war was coming. I knew my father would be furious. I knew the Rossi family would come for us. But in that moment, with Ilara in my arms and the city lights glittering below us, I didn't care. Let them come. Let them try to take her. I was the heir. I was the prince. And tonight, I was claiming my queen.
Chapter 8. Ilara. I had never been in a penthouse before. I had never been in a room where the walls were made of glass and the city looked like a carpet of diamonds spread out beneath my feet. But as Kalen carried me through the living room, I didn't look at the view. I looked at him. His face was a landscape of tension. His jaw was locked tight, a muscle ticking beneath the stubble on his cheek. His eyes were dark, blown wide with a hunger that should have terrified me. It didn't. It thrilled me. I wrapped my arms tighter around his neck, burying my face in the curve of his shoulder. He smelled like leather and the cold night air, mixed with the unique, spicy scent that was just him. It was the smell of danger, but it was also the smell of safety. He kicked the bedroom door open. The room was vast, dominated by a massive bed with black sheets. It was stark, masculine, devoid of any softness, until he laid me down on it. The mattress dipped under my weight. Kalen hovered over me, his hands braced on either side of my head. He looked down at me like I was a treasure he had stolen and didn't quite know how to keep. "Are you sure?" he asked. His voice was rough, gravelly. He wasn't asking if I wanted to have sex. He was asking if I was ready to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He was asking if I was ready to tie myself to a man who had enemies, a man who had blood on his hands, a man who had already gotten me shot once. I looked up at him. I saw the doubt warring with the desire in his eyes. He wanted me to say no. He wanted to be the noble hero who walked away. But I was done with noble. I reached up and grabbed the collar of his t-shirt. "I'm sure," I whispered. He let out a breath that sounded like a curse. He captured my mouth in a kiss that stole the air from my lungs. It was possessive, demanding, claiming every inch of me as his territory. His hands moved to the straps of my dress. He slid them down my shoulders, his palms rough against my skin. The silk pooled at my waist. He pulled back to look at me. His gaze traced the line of my throat, the curve of my breasts. and then settled lower. On my left side. The bandage was stark white against my skin. It was a reminder of the violence of his world. Kalen froze. The hunger in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a flash of agonizing guilt. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the gauze. "I did this," he murmured. I covered his hand with mine, pressing his palm flat against my stomach, just below the wound. "It's healing," I said. "It's a mark," he countered bitterly. "A brand. I marked you with violence before I ever touched you with kindness." "Then change it," I challenged. I arched my back slightly, bringing myself closer to him. "Touch me now. Make me forget how it happened." His eyes snapped back to mine. The fire returned, hotter than before. He moved down the bed. He kissed the hollow of my throat. He kissed the swell of my breast. And then, with a gentleness that broke my heart, he kissed the skin right at the edge of the bandage. I gasped, my fingers tangling in his dark hair. He worshipped the wound. He treated the scar like it was holy ground. His lips moved over my skin, hot and wet, replacing the memory of burning pain with a searing pleasure. He stripped the rest of the dress off me, tossing it onto the floor. Then he stood up to remove his own clothes. I watched him. I had never seen a man naked before. Not in person. Not like this. He pulled the t-shirt over his head. His torso was a map of hard muscle and ink. Tattoos swirled over his shoulders and down his arms, images of wolves, crowns, thorns. There was a scar on his shoulder, old and jagged, another on his hip. He shoved his jeans down. I swallowed hard. He was large, intimidating, beautiful. He knelt on the bed, moving over me. He settled between my legs, his weight supported on his forearms. He looked down at me, scanning my face. "You're shaking," he said softly. I was. A fine tremor was running through my limbs. It wasn't fear exactly. It was anticipation. It was the overwhelming reality that this was happening. The prince of the city was in my bed. I'm nervous, I admitted. "Don't be," he said. He leaned down and brushed his lips against my forehead. "I have you. I won't hurt you. Never again." He shifted, his hand moving between us. He touched me and I jolted. His touch was knowing, skilled. He stroked me, finding the sensitive spots I didn't know I had. I let out a broken sound, my hips lifting instinctively to meet his hand. "You are so responsive," he groaned against my neck. "So wet for me." I turned my face into the pillow to stifle a moan. The sensation was building too fast, a coil tightening low in my belly. "Kalen," I breathed. "Please." He positioned himself at my entrance. I felt the blunt pressure of him, the heat. He looked at me one last time. "Look at me, Ilara," he commanded. "I want you to see who is taking you." I opened my eyes. His gaze was intense, locking onto mine. He pushed forward slowly. I tensed. There was resistance, a sharp pinch of pain that I hadn't expected. I winced, a small gasp escaping me. Kalen stopped instantly. He went perfectly still, his body hovering over mine. He frowned, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Ilara?" I bit my lip, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, It's tight." He stared at me. He looked at my face, flushed and anxious. He looked down at where our bodies were joined. He pulled back an inch, and I let out a shaky breath of relief. The realization hit him. I saw it happen. His eyes widened, shock erasing the lust for a split second. "You've never done this," he said. It wasn't a question. I shook my head against the pillow. "No." His jaw went slack. "You're a virgin?" I felt my face burn hotter. "Is that a problem?" He stared at me like I had just spoken in a foreign language. He looked stunned. Then slowly a different kind of look took over. It was darker, heavier. A possessive growl rumbled deep in his chest. No, he said roughly. It is not a problem. He leaned down, burying his face in the crook of my neck. He inhaled deeply, as if trying to breathe me in. I thought I was stealing you, he whispered against my skin. I thought I was taking you away from a life you had already lived. But you are untouched. He lifted his head. His expression was fierce, almost terrifying in its intensity. I am your first, he said. Yes, I will be your only, he vowed. He kissed me then, and the tenor of the kiss changed. It wasn't just hungry anymore. It was reverent. It was a solemn oath. He moved again. This time he was agonizingly slow. He let me adjust to him inch by inch. He whispered praise against my lips, telling me how beautiful I was, how perfect I felt. Relax for me, sweetheart, he murmured. That's it. Take me. When he finally pushed past the barrier, I cried out. It hurt, but it was a good hurt. A feeling of fullness, of stretching, of being filled. He held still, letting the sensation settle. He kissed the tears from the corners of my eyes. You okay? He asked, his voice strained with the effort of holding back. I nodded. I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him closer. I'm okay, I whispered. Don't stop. He began to move. It was a slow, steady rhythm. He was careful with my side, taking the brunt of his weight on his arms, but he didn't hold back the depth of his thrusts. Every time he moved inside me, I felt it in my soul. It was a connection that went deeper than skin. He was rewriting me. He was erasing the lonely girl in the drafty apartment and replacing her with this fire, this heat, this belonging. Kaylin, I gasped, clutching his shoulders. I'm here, he gritted out. I'm right here. The pleasure began to build, a tightening spiral that made my toes curl. I arched my back, seeking more friction. Kaylin matched my pace. He was losing control. His breathing was ragged, his movements becoming more urgent. You are mine, he groaned. My ghost, my queen, my burden. The words swirled in my head, mixing with the sensation of his skin against mine. I felt the edge approaching. It was terrifying and wonderful. Let go, Ilara, he commanded. Let go for me. I did. The climax hit me like a wave crashing against the shore. I cried out his name, my body convulsing around him. He shouted something unintelligible, driving into me hard and fast, following me over the edge. He collapsed against me, burying his face in my hair, his body shuddering with his release. We lay there for a long time in the silence of the penthouse. The only sound was our harsh breathing and the hum of the city far below. Kaylin rolled to his side, pulling me with him so I was tucked against his chest. He kept his arm draped over my waist, his hand resting protectively over my hip, just below the bandage. I felt safe. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly safe. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. I lifted my face to look at him. He looked wrecked. His hair was messy, his lips swollen, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and satisfaction. He ran a thumb over my cheekbone. I meant what I said, he told me. His voice was serious, leaving no room for argument. About being my only? I asked softly. About everything, he said. He pulled the duvet up over us, cocooning us in warmth. No more apartments, he said. No more broken locks. No more walking home in the rain. He looked me in the eye. You live here now, Ilara, with me. I thought about my tiny studio. I thought about the peeling linoleum and the drafty window. I thought about the loneliness that had been my constant companion for 23 years. And then I looked at the man who had just claimed my body and my heart. The man who had watched me from the shadows because he was too afraid to touch the light, until he couldn't help himself. I didn't argue. I didn't fight him. I knew I should have made a stand for my independence, but lying here in his arms, independence felt overrated. Okay, I whispered. He kissed me again, slow and deep. "Go to sleep," he murmured. "You are safe." I closed my eyes, listening to the steady beat of his heart under my ear. I was the heir's burden. That's what he had called me. But as I drifted off to sleep, wrapped in his arms, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a prize.
Chapter 9. Kaylin. I woke up to the feeling of weight on my chest. In my line of work, waking up restricted usually meant you were about to die. It meant someone had broken in, gotten the drop on you, and was currently sitting on your lungs with a knife to your throat. My instinct was to strike, to grab a wrist, twist, and neutralize. But the weight wasn't heavy. It was warm. I opened my eyes, the adrenaline fading before it could fully spike. Ilara was asleep on top of me. She had sprawled out sometime in the night, seeking heat like a cat in a sunbeam. Her head was tucked under my chin, her breath puffing rhythmically against my collarbone. One of her legs was thrown over my hips, pinning me to the mattress. Her right hand, the one with the healing scar, was resting flat over my heart. I lay perfectly still. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to breathe too deep and wake her. For the first time in 28 years, I woke up without the immediate, crushing pressure of the family business waiting for me. Usually, my first thought was about shipments, territories, or which councilman needed a bribe. Today, my first thought was about how soft her hair was. I lifted my hand slowly, careful not to jostle her, and brushed a lock of brown hair away from her face. She mumbled something unintelligible and snuggled closer, her nose grazing my skin. Peace. That was the word. It was a foreign concept, a language I hadn't spoken since I was a child. But here, in the morning light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, with this woman anchored to me, I felt peace. It terrified me. Peace made you slow. It made you soft. And in my world, soft things got eaten. But looking at the bandage on her side peeking out from under the sheet, looking at the faint white line on her palm resting on my chest, I knew I would burn the world down to keep this quiet moment. I watched her sleep for an hour. I watched the dust motes dance in the light. I watched the rise and fall of her back. Finally, her eyelashes fluttered. She groaned, stretching against me. The movement rubbed her body against mine, and peace evaporated, replaced instantly by desire. "Good morning," I rasped. My morning voice was deeper than usual, rough with sleep. Ilara froze. She lifted her head, blinking blearily at me. Her hair was a bird's nest. She looked beautiful. "Morning," she whispered. She looked down at our tangled limbs. "Oh, I'm crushing you." I wrapped my arm around her waist, holding her in place when she tried to roll away. "I'm not complaining," I said. She smiled, a slow, sleepy thing that hit me right in the chest. "Is it late?" she asked. "It's noon." Her eyes went wide. "Noon! Kaylin, I have to work. Mrs. Gable is going to kill me." I missed the morning rush. She scrambled to sit up, but I tightened my grip. "Relax," I said. "You aren't going to work." "I have to," she argued, pushing at my chest. "I can't just not show up. It's a bakery, not a hobby. People need bread." "They can eat toast," I said. "Kaylin." She managed to wriggle out of my grasp, sitting up on the edge of the bed. She pulled the black sheet around her, covering her nakedness. The sight of her bare shoulders, marked with the faint pink impressions of my grip from last night, made my mouth go dry. I sat up, leaning back against the headboard, watching her. "We need to talk about logistics," I said. She paused, looking over her shoulder. "Logistics? That sounds romantic." "It's practical," I said. You live here now. She turned fully, clutching the sheet to her chest. We talked about this last night. I thought that was just pillow talk, adrenaline talk. I don't do pillow talk, Alara. I say what I mean. She stood up, wrapping the sheet like a toga. She began to pace the room, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet. I can't live here, Kaylin. Look at this place. It's a spaceship. It's gorgeous, yes, but it's not me. My clothes are at my apartment. My spices are there. My life is there. Your life was unsafe there, I countered. I stood up, uncaring of my nudity, and walked over to my dresser to pull out a pair of boxers. She averted her eyes, a blush creeping up her neck. It was charming. After everything we did last night, she was still shy. I pulled the boxers on. I can't just be a kept woman, she said to the wall. I have pride. I work. I earn my own way. I'm not going to sit here and drink expensive wine while you go out and do mafia things. I walked over to her, stepping into her path so she had to stop pacing. I don't want you to stop working, I said. I know how much that bakery means to you. I know you want to open your own place one day. I do, she said softly. So I have a solution. She narrowed her eyes. What solution? I bought the building, I said casually. She blinked. What? The building. The Crumb. I bought it this morning. The paperwork went through at 9:00 a.m. She stared at me, her mouth falling open. You bought the bakery? I bought the building that houses the bakery, I corrected, and the building next to it, and the one behind it. I own the block. She looked like I had just told her I bought the moon. Why? She squeaked. Because I can't secure a rental property that belongs to a slumlord, I explained. I need to control the perimeter. If I own the building, I can install blast-proof glass. I can put guards on the roof. I can secure the back alley. I reached out, taking her hands. I was careful with the right one, running my thumb over her scar. You can work, Alara. You can bake until your heart's content. But you do it in a building I control. You do it where I know you are safe. You're insane, she whispered. You are actually insane. I'm rich, I shrugged. There's a difference. She pulled her hands away, looking torn between laughing and screaming. You can't just buy real estate to win an argument, Kaylin. I just did. She threw her hands up. The sheet slipped, and she grabbed it quickly. You are a tyrant, she huffed. A controlling, overbearing, ridiculous tyrant. I stepped closer, invading her space. But, I prompted. She looked up at me. She tried to maintain her glare, but the corner of her mouth twitched. But, you're doing it because you're scared I'll get hurt again. I am terrified you'll get hurt again, I admitted, my voice dropping. I can't function when you are exposed, Alara. I can't breathe. Give me this. Let me fortify your world so I can sleep at night. She sighed, the fight draining out of her. She stepped forward, resting her forehead against my chest. Okay, she murmured. But I pay rent, I laughed. No, you don't. Kaylin. Fine, I conceded. You pay rent, $1 a month. She punched my arm lightly. Market value, you jerk. We'll negotiate later, I said, wrapping my arms around her. I leaned down to kiss her. I wanted to drag her back to bed. I wanted to spend the rest of the day exploring the body I had claimed, erasing every lingering doubt with my hands and my mouth. But the world outside the penthouse had other plans. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It wasn't a normal text vibration. It was the specific, jarring pattern that meant only one thing. The dawn. The bubble burst. The peace shattered. I pulled back from Alara, the warmth instantly leaving my body. I walked over and picked up the phone. My office. Now. 2 words. An order. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. He knew. He always knew. Everything okay? Ilara asked. She was watching me, her body tense. She sensed the shift in me. The lover was gone. The air was back. I have to go, I said, my voice clipped. My father. Is it about last night? Probably. I walked to the closet and started pulling on clothes. Black trousers, a fresh white shirt. I holstered my weapon, checking the clip. Ilara watched me dress. She looked small, standing in the middle of the room wrapped in the sheet. I'll be back, I said. I walked over to her. I kissed her hard, a promise and a warning. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. I know the drill, she said quietly. I looked at her one last time, memorizing the image of her safe in my room, and then I turned and walked out the door into the lion's den. The drive to the estate was silent. I didn't take Russo. I drove myself, my sports car tearing up the asphalt. I needed the speed. I needed the focus. I parked in the circular drive and stormed up the steps. The guards nodded to me, their faces blank. They knew better than to speak to me when I looked like this. I walked straight to my father's study. I didn't knock. I threw the double doors open. The room smelled of cigar smoke and old leather. My father, Nikolai, was sitting behind his massive desk. He looked impeccable in a 3-piece suit, his silver hair slicked back. But he wasn't alone. Silvio, the consigliere, was standing by the window. Turned when I entered, a polite, venomous smile on his face. "You're late," Nikolai said. "I was busy," I said, walking into the room. I didn't sit. I stood in the center of the Persian rug, ready for a fight. "Busy playing house," Silvio said smoothly. "Or is it playing doctor?" I turned my cold gaze on him. "Watch your mouth, Silvio, or I will cut it out." Silvio chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We have a problem, Kalen," my father said. He picked up a manila envelope from his desk and tossed it toward me. It slid across the polished wood, stopping at the edge. I picked it up. I opened it. Photos spilled out. My blood ran cold. They weren't photos of business meetings. They weren't photos of drug shipments. They were photos of Ilara. Ilara leaving her apartment building. Ilara walking into the Rusty Anchor last night. Ilara sitting at the bar, laughing with her friend. And then photos of me, dragging her out of the bar, kissing her in the alley, the two of us entering the lobby of the Spire. "These aren't from our surveillance," I said, my voice deadly calm. "No," Nikolai said. "They were sent to me this morning, by the Rossi family." I stared at the photo of Ilara in the green dress. She looked beautiful. She looked exposed. "They are tracking her, Kalen," Silvio said. "They know she is your weakness. They watched you take her to your penthouse. They know exactly where she is." I crushed the photos in my hand. "Then I will kill them," I said. "If they come near her—" "They don't have to come near her," my father shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. He stood up, his face flushing red. "You led them to her. You paraded her around the city like a trophy. You made her a target." "I protected her," I yelled back. "I took her to the safest place in the city." "You took her to your bed," Nikolai roared. And now the whole city knows that the heir to the Kovac Empire is compromising himself for a waitress with a scar on her hand. She is damaged goods, Kalen, and she is dragging you down with her. I went still. A cold, white rage settled over me. "Don't," I warned, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't you ever call her that again?" Silvio stepped forward, acting the peacemaker, though I knew he was the one pouring poison in my father's ear. "There is a solution," Silvio said. "A way to fix this mess and secure the family's future." I looked at him. "What solution?" "A marriage alliance," Silvio said. I laughed. "You have to be joking. The Rossi family is willing to call a truce," Silvio continued, ignoring my reaction. "They want to end the war. They are proposing a union. You and Giulia Rossi." I stared at him. Giulia Rossi was the daughter of the rival Don. She was a political pawn, raised to be a Mafia wife. I had met her once. She was cold, calculating, and completely indifferent to anything but status. "No," I said. "It is a good match," my father said, sitting back down. "It unites the territories. It ends the bloodshed. And it removes the target from your little pet's back." "My pet has a name," I snarled. "If you marry Giulia, the Rossis will leave the girl alone," Silvio said. "She becomes irrelevant. A mistress you keep on the side, perhaps. But the wife must be Rossi." I looked at the photos in my hand. I looked at the image of Ilara's face, smiling at me in the alleyway right before I kissed her. She wasn't a mistress. She wasn't a side piece. She was the air I breathed. I looked up at my father. I looked at Silvio. "No." "Kaylin, be reasonable. I said no." My voice echoed off the walls. I threw the crumpled photos onto the desk. "I am not marrying Giulia Rossi. I am not marrying anyone but the woman I choose." "You are the heir," my father shouted. "You have a duty." "My duty is to lead this family," I said, "not to sell myself like a broodmare." I walked up to the desk, placing my hands flat on the surface. I leaned in, looking my father in the eye. "Let me make something very clear," I said. My voice was low, vibrating with the promise of violence. "I choose Ilara." My father looked disgusted. "You choose a baker over your blood?" "I choose the woman who makes me human," I said. "And if the Rossis touch her, if you touch her, if anyone in this city looks at her the wrong way—" I straightened up, adjusting my cuffs. "I will end the lineage," I said. "I will burn the Rossi family to ash. And if I find out that this family, my family, had anything to do with leaking her location, I will burn this house down too." My father's eyes widened. He saw it then. He saw the shift. I wasn't asking for permission. I wasn't the boy who sought his approval anymore. I was the monster he had created, and I was off the leash. "Get out of my office," Nikolai whispered. I turned on my heel. "Consider the wedding off," I threw over my shoulder. I walked out of the study past Silvio, who was watching me with narrow, calculating eyes. I knew this wasn't over. I knew I had just started a war. But as I walked back to my car, dialing Ilara's number just to hear her breathe, I didn't care. They wanted a villain? Fine. I would be the villain. But I would be her villain.
Chapter 10. Ilara. I went back to work because I refused to be a doll kept in a glass box, even if that box was a penthouse in the sky. But things were different now. The bakery smelled the same: yeast, cinnamon, and burnt sugar. But the atmosphere had shifted. It used to be a place of chaotic noise. Mrs. Gable shouting orders, the grinder whirring, the door chiming every 30 seconds with neighborhood regulars. Now it felt controlled, sterilized. I stood behind the counter, arranging a tray of scones. I reached for a heavy sack of flour on the lower shelf. But as I bent down, a sharp, tight pull in my left side made me gasp. I froze, waiting for the spasm to pass. The wound Kaylin had accidentally given me, the graze along my ribs, had healed into a jagged pink scar. It didn't bleed anymore, but the muscle underneath was stiff. It ached when it rained. It ached when I lifted anything heavier than a gallon of milk. It was a constant physical reminder that I was mortal, and that I was involved with a man who dealt in death. I straightened up slowly, pressing my hand against my waist to massage the tension away. "You okay, Ilara?" I looked up. Marco, one of the guards Kaylin had posted, was watching me from the table by the door. He was a mountain of a man who looked like he could snap a baseball bat in half, but he looked at me with genuine worry. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little stiff." "The weather is turning." Marco nodded, turning back to watch the street. He and his partner Luca had been there for 4 hours. They sat with cold coffees, their jackets bulging slightly at the waist where their weapons were holstered. They screened every customer. They watched every car that slowed down outside. It was suffocating. It was safer, yes. Kaylin had kept his word. He bought the building. He installed tinted, bulletproof glass. He put cameras in the corners that blinked with a steady, unblinking red eye. But I missed the freedom of being nobody. The door chimed. Marco and Luca shifted instantly, hands twitching toward their waists. Then they relaxed, nodding their heads in deference. Kaylin walked in. The air in the room seemed to get heavier. He sucked up all the oxygen just by existing. He wasn't wearing his usual pristine suit. He was wearing dark jeans and a black sweater that clung to his chest. He looked less like a businessman today and more like a brawler who had tried to dress up for court. He looked terrible. His skin was pale, his eyes rimmed with red. There was a tension in his jaw that looked painful, like he was grinding his teeth down to dust. He walked straight to the counter. He didn't look at the pastries. He didn't look at Mrs. Gable, who was beaming at him from the kitchen. His eyes locked on mine. They were dark, stormy, and full of a desperate energy that made my stomach drop. "Ready?" he asked. His voice was rough, like he'd been smoking. I untied my apron. "I'm going on lunch." "Mrs. Gable," I called out. "Take your time, dear," she shouted back. Kaylin didn't wait. He reached over the counter and took my hand. His grip was tight. He led me out of the bakery, past the guards who stood at attention, and out to the curb where his sleek sports car was waiting. He didn't open the door for me this time. He just got in the driver's side and waited for me to slide in. We didn't go to a restaurant. He drove a few blocks away, toward the industrial waterfront, and parked in a secluded spot overlooking the gray, choppy water. Rain was starting to spit against the windshield. He killed the engine but didn't look at me. He stared out at the water, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. "Kaylin?" I asked softly. He flinched. He let out a long, shaky breath and finally turned his head. The look in his eyes broke my heart. It was fear. Pure, unadulterated fear. "My father knows," he said. I swallowed hard. "Knows about what?" "About us. About the penthouse. About the injury." I instinctively wrapped my arm around my ribs, protecting the scar beneath my sweater. "He showed me photos," Kaylin continued. "They were taken by the Rossi family. They have been tracking you, Ilara. They watched us leave the bar. They watched us go into my building. They know you are with me." A chill went down my spine. The feeling of being watched returned, crawling over my skin. "So, we are in danger?" I asked. He laughed, a bitter sound. "We are always in danger. But this is political." He turned his body toward me, leaning over the center console. He looked like he was trying to memorize my face. "The war is bad, Ilara. It's costing money. It's costing lives. The Rossis want it to end. That's good, isn't it? It depends on the price." He reached out. He didn't touch my hand. He placed his large, warm palm on my side, right over the spot where I had been shot. Even through the coat, I felt the heat of his touch. He pressed gently, as if checking to make sure I was still whole. "They offered a truce," he said quietly. "A marriage alliance." I stopped breathing. Marriage? To Giulia Rossi, he said, the Don's daughter. If I marry her, the families unite. The territory dispute ends. The bloodshed stops. He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. And if I marry her, you are safe. The target comes off your back. You become irrelevant to them. Just a fling I had before I did my duty. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked at him. I saw the exhaustion. I saw the weight of the crown he talked about. He was being offered a way out. A way to stop the violence. A way to be the perfect heir his father wanted. All he had to give up was me. I pulled away from his touch, pressing my back against the door. I felt sick. So, are you asking for my permission? I whispered. Are you breaking up with me? His head snapped up. Fury flashed in his eyes, hot and sudden. No, he roared. The sound filled the small car. He grabbed my face between his hands, pulling me toward him. His grip was firm, almost painful. No, he repeated, his voice dropping to a fierce growl. I told them no. I told them to go to hell. I told my father I would burn the Rossi estate to the ground before I stood at an altar with anyone but you. I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. You refused? I laughed in their faces, he said. But Kaylin, the war. I don't care about the war, he said. I don't care about the territory or the money or the legacy. I care about you. He leaned his forehead against mine. I could feel him shaking. But I'm scared, Ilara, he confessed, his voice breaking. I'm terrified, because by choosing you, I have put you right in the center of the crosshairs. My father is furious. The Rossis will be insulted. The violence isn't going to stop. It's going to get worse. He pulled back slightly to look at me. And I'm scared you're going to leave, he whispered. I'm scared you're going to look at this mess, at the danger I bring to your life, and you're going to run. And I wouldn't blame you. I should let you run. I should put you on a plane to somewhere safe and never speak to you again. He looked so broken, so convinced that he was unlovable, that he was poison. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the scar on his eyebrow from a fight he got into when he was 16. I saw the shadow of stubble on his jaw. I saw the man who had sat by my bed for 2 weeks, refusing to leave while my ribs knitted back together. The man who fortified my apartment. The man who bought a bakery building just to put bulletproof glass between me and the world. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man who had been taught that love was a weakness. I reached up. I cupped his cheek. You think I'm going to run? I asked softly. He opened his eyes. Yes. I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. Kaylin, look at me. He met my gaze. You put a bullet in my side, I said. It hurt. It still hurts when I laugh too hard or when the rain comes. I know, he choked out. I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. Because it reminds me that I survived, and it reminds me that you came back for me. I moved my hand to the back of his neck, tangling my fingers in his hair. I have seen the blood, Kaylin, I said firmly. I have seen the violence. I was there when the windows blew out the first time. I know exactly what I am signing up for. I pulled him closer, until our lips were almost touching. I'm not a glass doll, I whispered. I don't break that easily. And I am certainly not going to leave you just because things are getting hard. Ilara. I love you, I said. The words hung in the air between us. I had never said them out loud. I had felt them, lived them, but I hadn't said them. Kaylin stopped breathing. He stared at me like I had just handed him the keys to the universe. Say it again, he rasped. I love you, I repeated. I love the stalker. I love the prince. I love the man who puts too much cream in my coffee. A sound ripped out of his throat, half sob, half laugh. He crashed his mouth onto mine. It was a desperate kiss. It tasted of salt and relief. He kissed me like he was drowning and I was the only air left in the world. He pulled me into his lap, careless of the gear shift digging into his hip or the awkward angle in the small car. I winced as the movement pulled at my scar, but I ignored it. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him tight, anchoring him. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "God, I love you so much it hurts." He pulled back, resting his forehead against mine again. His breathing was ragged, but the fear in his eyes was gone, replaced by a steely determination. "You chose me," he said. "I chose you." "Then I am going to fix this," he vowed. He looked out the window at the gray water, his expression hardening. The vulnerability vanished, locked away behind the armor of the air. But I knew it was still there, kept safe for me. "I am done playing defense," he said. "I am done reacting to them." "What are you going to do?" I asked, tracing the line of his collar. He looked back at me. His eyes were cold, deadly. "I promised to end the threat," he said, "and I keep my promises. The Rossies want a war? I'll give them a war. But it's going to be the last one they ever fight." He shifted me back into the passenger seat. He smoothed my hair, fixed my coat, and then gripped the steering wheel. He started the engine. The car roared to life. "I'm taking you back to the bakery," he said. "Keep the guards close. Don't leave the building until I come for you." "Where are you going?" "To find the leak," he said. "Someone told the Rossies where we were last night. Someone on the inside." He put the car in gear. "And when I find them," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down my spine, "I am going to make them wish they had never heard the name Ilara."
Chapter 11. Kaylin. I tore my car apart. I didn't just search it. I gutted it. I ripped the custom leather seats out with a serrated knife. I dismantled the dashboard, tossing expensive German electronics onto the concrete floor of the estate garage. I checked the wheel wells, the undercarriage, the engine block. I stripped the vehicle down to a skeleton of steel and wire, sweat dripping down my back, my breath coming in short, angry bursts. Nothing. There was no tracker, no magnetic bug, no GPS relay hidden in the bumper. I stood in the wreckage of my favorite car, chest heaving. I wiped the grease from my forehead with the back of my hand, staring at the pile of debris. If there was no tracker on the car, how? How did the Rossies know exactly where we were last night? How did they get those photos of us entering the penthouse lobby? That building was a fortress. The private elevator required a key card that only I possessed, unless the tracker wasn't on the car. I froze. My gaze landed on the workbench where I had tossed my belongings before I started my demolition. My keys, my wallet, my gun, and my phone. I walked over to it slowly. It was a sleek, encrypted device issued by the family's security team. We updated them every month to stay ahead of the feds. New software, new firewalls. Who managed the security protocols? Silvio. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. It wasn't a physical bug. It was a digital leash. I picked up the phone. I didn't turn it on. I flipped it over, staring at the black casing. Silvio insisted on a manual update 3 days ago. He said there was a critical vulnerability in the network. He took my phone for an hour. "You make me weak." That's what he had said in my father's office. He wasn't just observing my weakness. He was tracking it. He was weaponizing it. I didn't smash the phone. Not yet. I needed it. I grabbed a fresh shirt from the laundry pile by the door, pulling it on as I strode out of the garage. I bypassed the main house and went straight to the server room in the basement. Ricci, the IT specialist, was sitting amidst a hum of cooling fans and blinking lights. He was a nervous kid with nimble fingers and zero spine. He jumped when I kicked the door open. "Ricci," I barked. "Boss?" He spun around in his chair, his eyes wide. "Is everything okay? You look... I look like I'm about to kill someone." I finished for him. I threw the phone at him. He fumbled, barely catching it before it hit the floor. "Unlock the root directory. Show me the last update log. Now." Ricci swallowed hard. Boss, that's restricted. Only the Consigliere has the admin codes for the top level." I pulled my gun. I didn't point it at him. I just placed it on the desk, heavy and loud. "Unlock it, Ricci, or I will assume you are part of the problem." He typed. His fingers were shaking so bad he hit the wrong keys twice. I waited, my patience vibrating like a taut wire. If Silvio was tracking me, he knew I was at the estate right now. He knew Ilara was at the bakery. "Got it!" Ricci squeaked. He turned the monitor toward me. I leaned in. It was a wall of code, but I knew what to look for. And there it was, a subroutine running in the background. GPS relay, audio mirroring. He was listening. He had been listening to everything, every conversation, every promise, every time I told Ilara I loved her. "Who installed this?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Ricci looked at the screen. It says Admin User 1. Silvio. I didn't kill the kid. He was just a tool. I grabbed him by the collar of his hoodie and hauled him close. "Where is Silvio's associate? Marco, the one who runs his errands." Ricci stammered. I think he's in the West Wing security office. He was checking the perimeter sensors." I dropped him. "Stay here. If you touch a keyboard, I'll know." I moved. I didn't run. I hunted. I found Marco in the security office. He was a brute, a musclehead who did Silvio's dirty work because he enjoyed the violence. He was drinking an espresso, feet up on the desk, looking relaxed. Too relaxed. He started to stand when I walked in. "Kaylin, I didn't know you were back from..." I didn't let him finish. I didn't have time for banter. I drew my weapon and put a bullet in his kneecap. Marco screamed, collapsing to the floor, clutching his shattered leg. Blood pooled instantly on the linoleum. The cup of espresso shattered, spraying dark liquid everywhere. I kicked the gun from his hip holster and stood over him. "Where is Silvio?" I asked. Marco gasped, his face gray with shock. You shot me! You crazy!" I aimed at the other knee. "Where is he?" He left," Marco choked out. "He left an hour ago." "Where did he go?" "I don't know. He said the deal was done." My stomach dropped. The deal, the marriage alliance. I had rejected it. So what was the alternative? "If you marry Julia, the target comes off your little pet's back." But I hadn't married her. I grabbed Marco by his hair, yanking his head back. I pressed the muzzle of my gun against his forehead. The barrel was still warm. "What did he give the Rossis?" I roared. "If he isn't giving them a truce, what is he giving them?" Marco was crying now. Snot and tears mixed on his face. "He gave them the codes," he screamed. "He gave them the bypass codes." "What codes?" "For the bakery. He gave them the security override for the new system you installed." The world stopped. The sound of Marco's sobbing faded into a high-pitched ring in my ears. I bought the building. I reinforced the glass. I hired the guards. I thought I had built her a fortress. But Silvio had the master keys. He didn't just track Ilara. He unlocked the door for the wolves. "Why?" I whispered. Marco shook his head, trembling. He said you were too emotional. He said if the girl was gone, you would focus. He said the Rossies would do the dirty work, and we would blame it on the war. I saw red, a pure, blinding crimson that washed over my vision. They weren't just going to scare her. They were going to kill her. Today. Now. And I wasn't there. I pulled the trigger. I didn't watch Marco fall. I was already moving. I sprinted out of the office, down the hall, and out the front doors. My sports car was in pieces in the garage. I ran to the nearest vehicle, an armored SUV used for transport. I ripped the driver out of the seat, throwing him onto the gravel. "Keys!" I shouted. He threw them at me, terrified. I jumped in. I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. I peeled out of the driveway, tearing up the lawn, smashing through the iron gate before it could fully open. Metal shrieked against metal, but I didn't lift my foot off the gas. I grabbed my phone, the compromised one. I didn't care if Silvio was listening now. Let him hear the wrath of God coming for him. I dialed Russo, the head of my detail. "Get every unit to the bakery," I screamed into the phone. "Now!" "Boss? What's happened?" "It's a hit. Code black. They have the bypass codes. The perimeter is compromised. Get there now." I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. I drove like a madman. I ran red lights. I drove on the sidewalk to get around traffic. I leaned on the horn, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and terror that made my vision blur. "Please," I prayed. "Please let me be fast enough." I had promised her. I had sat in that car 30 minutes ago and promised her she was safe. And my own family had opened the gate. I envisioned Ilara. I saw her in her apron. I saw the scar on her ribs, the wound I had already caused. "I'm not a glass doll," she had said. "I don't break that easily." "Hold on," I whispered, gripping the wheel until the leather cracked. "Just hold on, Ilara." I reached for the radio, tuning it to the police scanner. Static. Then, a voice. "Shots fired. 400 block of 4th Street. Vehicle ramming reported. Multiple shooters. Officer down." 4th Street. The bakery. It had already started. I slammed my foot to the floor, pushing the heavy SUV to its limit. The engine whined in protest. I wasn't the prince anymore. I wasn't the heir. I was a man watching his world burn, racing to save the only thing that mattered from the ashes. Burn it, I thought, my eyes fixed on the horizon where smoke was starting to rise. If they touched her, if they hurt her again, I would burn everything in my path.
Chapter 12. Ilara. The smell of rising dough usually calmed me. It was a scent of patience, of slow growth, of things becoming what they were meant to be. I stood in the center of the newly renovated kitchen, wiping flour off the stainless steel counter with my left hand. My right hand moved automatically to my side, pressing against the thick sweater I wore. It was raining outside, a gray, miserable drizzle that slicked the streets of Viridia Bay, and the drop in pressure was making the scar on my ribs ache. It was a phantom throb, a deep, tight pulling sensation where the bullet had grazed me months ago. It wasn't sharp pain anymore, just a dull, persistent reminder that I was mortal, and that I belonged to a man who lived in the crosshairs. "You okay, Ilara?" I looked up. Marco, the senior guard Kaylin had posted inside the shop, was watching me from the doorway connecting the front of the house to the kitchen. He was a bear of a man, wide-shouldered and scarred, holding a half-eaten bagel in one hand and keeping the other near the holster under his jacket. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just the weather. My side gets cranky when it rains." He nodded sympathetically. "My knee is the same way. Took a pipe to it back in '08. Never lets me forget a storm is coming." I turned back to the industrial mixer. It was a beast of a machine, gleaming chrome and digital displays. Kaylin had replaced everything. The oven, the proofer, the floors. He had fortified the walls, installed bulletproof glass that was tinted just enough to obscure the view from the street, and put in a security system that rivaled the Federal Reserve. I felt safe here. Or I had let myself feel safe. I walked over to the back door to check the delivery log for the flour shipment. Beep, beep, beep. It wasn't the oven timer. It wasn't the coffee machine. It was a sharp, descending tone coming from the main security panel mounted by the delivery entrance. I froze. I knew that sound. Kaylin had drilled me on the system protocols until I could recite them in my sleep. That tone meant the perimeter was disarmed. I looked at the panel. The comforting green light that usually hummed next to the armed status flickered and died. It was replaced instantly by a steady, unblinking red light. "Marco?" I called out, my voice trembling. Marco was already moving. He dropped the bagel on the floor, his hand flying to his weapon. He tapped the earpiece he wore. "Base, this is Alpha 1. The system just cycled down. Did we authorize a reset?" Silence. Then a burst of static. "Base, report!" Marco shouted. He looked at the front window, then back at me. His face, usually impassive, had gone pale. "Ilara, get to the back!" he roared. "Now!" He didn't have to tell me twice. The instinct that Kaylin had tried so hard to instill in me, the survival instinct that had been dormant since the night at the penthouse, kicked in hard. But we were too late. A mechanical, whirring sound echoed from the street. I looked past Marco, through the open doorway to the front of the shop. The heavy steel bollards, the thick posts Kaylin had installed on the sidewalk, specifically to stop vehicles from crashing into the building, were retracting into the ground. Someone had lowered the gates. "Get down!" Marco screamed, raising his weapon toward the glass. The front of the bakery exploded. It wasn't gunfire. It was a blunt force trauma. A heavy black van smashed through the glass front of the shop, unimpeded by the safety posts. The reinforced pane, which should have held against bullets, shattered under the sheer tonnage of the vehicle. The van tore through the display cases, sending muffins, croissants, and glass shards flying in a deadly shower. The sound was deafening, metal screaming against metal, the roar of an engine revving. The building shook like it had been hit by an earthquake. I screamed, dropping to the floor and scrambling backward on my hands and knees. Marco opened fire. The crack, crack, crack of his handgun was deafening in the enclosed space. The back doors of the van flew open. Men spilled out. They weren't wearing masks. They were wearing tactical gear, heavy vests, and carrying rifles that looked like they belonged in a war zone. They opened fire immediately. Marco jerked back as bullets slammed into his chest. His vest held the first two, but the sheer force knocked him off his feet. He fell behind the counter, shouting into his radio for backup that I knew wasn't coming fast enough. "Move, Ilara, move!" he yelled, firing blindly over the counter. I didn't watch. I couldn't watch. I scrambled on my hands and knees toward the dry storage room. My side screamed in protest, the scar tissue pulling tight as I crawled, but I ignored it. I clawed my way forward, my breath coming in short, terrified gasps. Bullets chewed up the drywall above my head, sending plaster dust raining down into my hair. The noise was overwhelming. It was a chaotic symphony of violence. I reached the heavy steel door of the dry storage room. I grabbed the handle, threw it open, and practically fell inside. I kicked the door shut behind me and threw the deadbolt. I collapsed against the sacks of 50-pound flour, my chest heaving. It was dark in here. The only light came from the crack under the door. I could hear the shouting outside. I could hear the heavy thud of boots on the tile. "Where is she?" a voice yelled. "Find the bitch!" I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle the sob clawing its way up my throat. They were looking for me. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution. I curled into a ball, pulling my knees to my chest. I clutched my side, my fingers digging into the scar through my sweater, as if I could hold myself together by sheer force of will. "I promised you were safe." Kaylin's voice echoed in my mind. He had promised. He had done everything right. He had bought the building. He had reinforced the walls, but someone had opened the door. I fumbled in the pocket of my apron. My fingers brushed against the hard plastic of the burner phone Kaylin insisted I carry. I pulled it out. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I dialed the single number saved in the contacts. It rang once. Then the line went dead. No signal. They were jamming it. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. I was alone, trapped in a dark room with flour and yeast while men with rifles tore apart my life. Something slammed against the storage room door. I flinched, scrambling backward until my spine hit the metal shelving unit. "Open up!" a man shouted. Another slam. The metal groaned. I looked around frantically for a weapon. A rolling pin, a knife, anything. But this was dry storage. There was nothing but ingredients. I grabbed a bag of sugar. It was pathetic. It was a baking ingredient against an assault rifle. But I held it anyway. I wouldn't go down without throwing something. "Come on!" the voice outside yelled. "Blow the hinges!" I squeezed my eyes shut. I thought about the first time I met him. The rain, the coffee. The way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. I thought about the night in the penthouse. The way he had kissed the scar on my ribs, worshipping the very thing that had hurt me. I didn't want to die. I wanted to go home to him. The door buckled. A sliver of light appeared at the top where the metal was bending. "Here we go," someone laughed. Then a different sound cut through the chaos. It was the roar of an engine outside, followed by the screech of tires and a sickening crunch of metal. Gunfire erupted again, but it was different this time. It was closer, louder, more aggressive. I heard screaming, not from me, from the men outside. The pounding on my door stopped. "What the hell is—" The man outside the door never finished his sentence. I heard a wet thud, like a melon being dropped on concrete, and then the sound of a body hitting the floor. Silence fell. It was heavy and terrifying. I held my breath, clutching the bag of sugar so tight my knuckles turned white. I listened. Footsteps. Heavy, fast, purposeful footsteps approaching the door. They crunched over glass and debris. I braced myself. I pulled my legs tighter. "Ilara?" The voice was a roar, a raw sound of panic and rage that vibrated through the metal door. "Kaylin." I let out a sob. "Kaylin! I'm in here!" I screamed. "I'm in here!" The door handle rattled. "Locked! Ilara, move back! Move away from the door!" I scrambled to the side, covering my head with my arms. 3 gunshots rang out, blowing the lock mechanism apart. The door was kicked open with such force it slammed against the wall. Light flooded the small room. Kaylin stood in the doorway. He looked like a demon. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a tactical vest over a black t-shirt that was soaked with sweat and blood. Not his, I hoped. He held a rifle in one hand, gripping it by the barrel like a club. His hair was wild, plastered to his forehead. His face was streaked with soot and grime. But his eyes were wild, terrified, manic. He scanned the dark room, the rifle raising, looking for a target. Then he saw me. He dropped the gun. It clattered to the floor, forgotten. "Ilara." The sound that came out of him broke me. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated relief. He fell to his knees in front of me. He didn't care about the flour on the floor or the glass shards. He reached for me, his hands shaking so violently they were blurring. I threw myself at him. I buried my face in his neck, wrapping my arms around him as tight as I could. I smelled the gunpowder on him, the copper scent of blood, the sweat. It was the best smell in the world. "I got you," he choked out, his voice wrecked. "I got you, baby. I'm here." He pulled back, his hands frantic as they roamed over me. He checked my head, my arms. Then his hands went straight to my waist. He pressed his palms against my sides, checking the old wound, checking for new ones. "Are you hit?" he demanded, his eyes searching mine. "Ilara, tell me, did they touch you?" "No," I sobbed, shaking my head. "No, I'm okay. I hid. I'm okay." He let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He leaned his forehead against mine, closing his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with tears. "I'm so sorry. I failed you. I built the walls, but I gave them the key." "You came," I said, holding his face, feeling the rough stubble against my palms. "You came back." "I will always come back," he swore. "I will burn the world down to come back to you." He stood up, pulling me with him. He didn't let me walk. He swept me up into his arms, cradling me against his chest like I weighed nothing. "Don't look," he commanded, pressing my face into his shoulder. "Bury your face, Ilara. Don't look at the shop." I did as he asked. I pressed my face into the tactical vest, closing my eyes tight. But I could still hear the crunch of glass under his boots. I could smell the smoke. I sensed the stillness of the bodies we were stepping over. He carried me out of the storage room, through the ruined kitchen. "Marco?" I whispered into his shoulder. "Russo has him," Kaylin said tightly. "He's alive. He fought like a lion." We stepped out the back exit into the alley. The cool air hit my face. Rain was falling harder now, mixing with the smoke rising from the front of the building. His car wasn't there. Instead, there was a black, armored truck idling, its engine rumbling like a beast. Russo was at the wheel, looking grim. Kaylin yanked the back door open and climbed in with me, not letting me go for a second. "Drive," he ordered. "The estate." The door slammed shut, sealing us in. Kaylin pulled me into his lap, rocking me back and forth. He was murmuring things into my hair, prayers, curses, promises of vengeance. "I'm going to kill them," he whispered, his voice turning cold and deadly. "Every single one of them, the consigliere, the Rossis, everyone who had a hand in this." I didn't say anything. I just held on to him. I looked down at his hand, which was pressed firmly, protectively over my side, over the scar. The bakery was gone. My safe place was gone. The fortress he had built was a pile of rubble. But as Kaylin tightened his arms around me, shielding me from the world, I realized that the building didn't matter. He was my safe place. And he was shaking. The monster, the prince, the killer, he was shaking because he loved me. I pressed a kiss to the pulse point on his neck. "Take me home, Kaylin," I whispered. He looked down at me. The fire in his eyes burned hot enough to scorch the earth. "We're going home," he said. "And then? Then I am going to finish this war."
Chapter 13. Kaylin. The rain had turned into a deluge by the time the armored truck tore through the gates of the estate. I didn't wait for the vehicle to stop completely before I kicked the heavy rear door open. I had Ilara wrapped in my arms, shielded from the downpour by my tactical vest and the sheer force of my will. She was shivering, not from the cold, but from the shock. I carried her up the stone steps. The guards scrambled to open the massive oak doors, their eyes widening as they took in the state of us. I was covered in soot, blood, and rain. Ilara was covered in flour dust that had turned to paste on her clothes. I didn't take her to the medical wing. She wasn't hit. I had checked her 3 times in the truck. I didn't take her to my room. It wasn't safe enough yet. I took her to the East Wing, my mother's sanctuary. My father ran the business with an iron fist, but Elena Kovac ran the house. She was the only person in this God-forsaken family who had kept her soul intact. She was fierce, protective, and she was the only one I trusted to keep Ilara alive while I went to finish what I started. I kicked open the doors to her private sitting room. My mother was standing by the fireplace, a book in her hand. She looked up, her expression shifting from annoyance to horror as she saw us. "Kaylin!" she gasped, dropping the book. "Lock the doors, Mother," I said, my voice hoarse. I set Ilara down on the velvet sofa. She clung to my hand, her knuckles white. Her eyes were wide, terrified, darting around the room. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I have to go," I said. "I have to end it." "No," she pleaded, trying to pull me back. "Stay. Please, just stay. You're hurt." "I'm not hurt," I said. "This isn't my blood." I knelt in front of her. I took her face in my hands. I used my thumbs to wipe away a smudge of wet flour on her cheek. "If I stay, they will keep coming," I said intensely. "They will come for you again. And next time, I might be too late. I can't live with that chance, Ilara. I won't." I kissed her. It was hard and fast, a desperate seal on a promise I intended to keep. "Watch her," I said to my mother, standing up. "Don't let Father in. Don't let anyone in. If they try to force the door, you shoot them." Elena Kovac nodded slowly. She didn't ask questions. She saw the look in my eyes, the look of a man who had nothing left to lose. And she understood. She moved to the sofa, sitting beside Ilara and wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Go," my mother said. "Come back to us." I forced myself to turn away. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to stay, to guard her, to hold her until the shaking stopped. But a protector doesn't just hold the shield. Sometimes he has to pick up the sword. I walked out of the room. I heard Ilara sob my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I looked back, I would never leave. I drove my father's car. It was a heavy, armored sedan that handled like a tank. I didn't care about the paint job as I clipped the iron gate on my way out of the driveway. I wasn't going to the Rossi stronghold first. I was going to the root of the rot. Silvio lived in a penthouse uptown, not far from my own building. It was a sterile, modern place paid for by 30 years of skimming off the top of my father's empire. I parked on the sidewalk. I didn't bother with the buzzer. I shot the lock off the lobby door and took the stairs 2 at a time. The rage in my chest was a cold, solid weight. It wasn't the fiery anger I had felt at the bakery. This was different. This was executioner's ice. I reached his floor. I walked down the hall to door 12A. I didn't knock. I raised my leg and kicked the door right below the handle. The wood splintered with a satisfying crunch. The door swung open, banging against the wall. Silvio was standing in his living room. He had a suitcase open on the coffee table. He was packing. He froze, a silk shirt in his hand. He looked at me. He looked at the tactical vest, the dirt, the gun in my hand. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. "You took longer than I expected," he said calmly. I walked into the room, stepping over the debris of the doorframe. "You sold us out," I said. My voice was quiet, deadly. Silvio dropped the shirt into the case. He turned to pour himself a drink from the decanter on the sideboard. "I saved the family," he corrected. "Or I tried to. Your father is old, Kaylin. He is sentimental. And you are unstable." He took a sip of the scotch, grimacing. "A leader cannot be compromised by emotion," he lectured. "You let a girl, a nobody, dictate your moves. You bought real estate to protect her. You started a war to keep her. You are weak." I watched him. I watched the arrogance that dripped off him like oil. "You gave them the codes," I said. You let them into the bakery. You knew she was there. Of course I knew, he sneered. She was the bait. If she died, you would have been free. You would have mourned for a week, maybe a month, and then you would have married Giulia Rossi and secured the alliance. It was a necessary sacrifice. Necessary sacrifice. The words echoed in my head. I thought of Ilara huddled in the dark storage room, clutching a bag of sugar because it was the only weapon she had. I thought of the way she held her side, protecting the scar I had given her. I raised the gun. She isn't a sacrifice, I said. She is the future. Silvio laughed. She is a waitress, Kaylin. She is dust. I pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening in the small room. Silvio stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. The glass of scotch shattered on the floor. He stared at me in shock. You shot me, he gasped. I walked closer. That was for the bakery, I said. I aimed lower. I shot him in the kneecap. He screamed, collapsing to the floor. He writhed in agony, blood pooling on his expensive white rug. That was for the fear you put in her eyes, I said. I stood over him. He looked up at me, his face gray, sweat beading on his forehead. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was a pathetic, dying man. Kaylin, please, he wheezed. I did it for the family. I am the family, I said. I aimed the gun at his chest. And I am cleaning house. I fired. Silvio went still. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel joy. I felt efficient. A problem had been removed. A threat neutralized. I reached down and patted his pockets. I found his phone. It was sleek, encrypted, the device he used to sell my secrets. I pocketed it. I turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving the door hanging off its hinges. One down. The drive to the Rossi estate took 20 minutes. I spent the time rehearsing the lie. It had to be perfect. It had to be convincing. The Rossi family lived in a compound on the north side of the city. It was a fortress, surrounded by high walls and armed guards. I pulled the battered sedan up to the main gate. The guards aimed their rifles at the windshield. I stepped out of the car. I held my hands up, palms open. I was unarmed. I had left my gun on the passenger seat. I want to speak to Don Rossi, I shouted over the sound of the rain. The guards exchanged looks. One of them spoke into a radio. Minutes passed. The rain soaked through my t-shirt, washing away the dust from the bakery. I stood there, unmoving. I was a target. They could have dropped me right there. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and they knew who I was. The gate buzzed and began to slide open. A black limo drove out, stopping 10 feet from me. The window rolled down. Vincenzo Rossi sat in the back. He was a contemporary of my father, a man who respected the old ways. He looked at me with suspicion. You have nerve coming here, Kovac, he said. After the mess your boy made of my soldiers today. Your soldiers attacked a bakery, I said. They attacked a civilian business. They attacked a military target, he countered. Your consigliere assured us it was a command post. I reached into my pocket. The guards tensed, fingers tightening on triggers. I pulled out Silvio's phone. Silvio lied, I said. I tossed the phone. It clattered onto the pavement near the limo. Check the messages, I said. Check the logs. He played us both. He wanted a war so he could oust my father and install a puppet. He sent your men into a meat grinder to weaken you, and he sent me after them to weaken us. Rossi looked at the phone, then back at me. And where is Silvio now? Dead, I said. Rossi hummed. He opened the car door and stepped out. He was a small man, but he carried himself with weight. So you cleaned your house, he said. That is good, but it does not change the fact that we are at war. You rejected the alliance. You insulted my daughter. I didn't reject the alliance, I said. I rejected the, terms. I took a step forward. I am not marrying your daughter. I am marrying the woman your men tried to kill today. Rossi raised an eyebrow. The baker? The queen, I corrected. He laughed. A romantic. Your father must be sick over it. My father is irrelevant, I said. I am running things now. And why should I care? Rossi asked. Why should I not kill you right now and take the city for myself? Because, I said, keeping my voice steady, my face completely devoid of fear. Because if you kill me, you die too. Rossi frowned. He looked around. You are unarmed. You are alone. I reached into my other pocket. I pulled out a small black device. It was a garage door opener I had swiped from the sedan's visor. It had a single red button. I held it up. My men have been busy while we were fighting at the bakery, I lied. While your soldiers were distracted, my demolition team accessed your perimeter. Rossi stiffened. The foundation of this house is rigged, I said. 200 pounds of C4. It is wired to this remote. It is a dead man's switch. If my heart stops, the signal cuts, and you go boom. If I press this button, you go boom. I stepped closer, until I was face to face with the rival Don. I looked into his eyes. I let him see the madness there. I let him see the desperation of a man who had almost lost his soul an hour ago. I have nothing left to lose, Rossi, I whispered. You touched her. You threatened her. I am ready to die today. Are you? The rain dripped off the remote in my hand. Rossi stared at me. He looked for the lie. He looked for the bluff. But he didn't see a bluff. He saw a man who had driven through a war zone to save a girl. He saw a man who had executed his own advisor. He saw a man who was crazy enough to do it. He swallowed. He looked back at his mansion, at his guards, at his life. Fear flickered in his eyes. He believed me. Okay, he said softly. He held up a hand, signaling his guards to stand down. Okay, Kovac, you made your point. I want a truce, I said. A real one. No marriage. We stick to the old borders. You stay out of the north. I stay out of the south. And if anyone comes near my wife, the deal is off, and the bombs go off. Rossi nodded slowly. Agreed. Shake on it. He hesitated, then reached out. We shook hands in the rain. His grip was damp, nervous. Mine was iron. I stepped back. I kept the remote held high. I will send a team to remove the explosives once I am safely home, I said. Generous of you, Rossi muttered. I walked backward to my car. I didn't turn my back on them. I kept the remote visible until I was inside the sedan. I started the engine. I drove away slowly, keeping the speed limit until I rounded the corner. Then I gunned it. My heart was pounding so hard my vision blurred. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I threw the garage door opener onto the passenger seat. It was the biggest gamble of my life. And I had won. I drove back toward the estate. The rain was stopping. The clouds were breaking. The war was over. Silvio was dead. The Rossis were neutralized. My father had been sidelined. I was the Don now, truly. But as the estate came into view, looming large and gray against the sky, I didn't feel like a king. I just felt like a man who needed to go home. I parked the car and ran up the steps. I ignored the guards. I ignored the servants. I ran to the east wing. I burst through the doors. My mother looked up from her chair, but my eyes went to the sofa. Ilara was there. She was sitting up, wrapped in a blanket, clean and safe. She looked exhausted, her hand resting absently on her side, protecting the old scar. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and hope. "Kaylin," she whispered. I dropped to my knees. I buried my face in her lap. "It's done," I choked out. "It's over."
Chapter 14. Ilara. 24 hours is an eternity when you are waiting for the dust to settle. I sat on a stone bench in the center of the East Garden, staring at the wrought iron gates that marked the entrance to the Kovac estate. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. It was beautiful, peaceful, and completely at odds with the storm that had just passed through our lives. I hadn't slept much. After Kaylin had stormed into the sitting room yesterday, bloodied, terrifying, and alive, he had collapsed into my lap for exactly 5 minutes. He had held me like I was the only anchor in a hurricane. And then, he had stood up. He had kissed my forehead, told his mother to guard me with her life, and walked back out the door to deal with the mess. The mess being the bodies, the police, the bakery that was now a pile of rubble, the father who despised me. I pulled the cashmere cardigan tighter around my shoulders. It belonged to Elena, Kaylin's mother. It smelled like lavender and old money. My own clothes, the flour-dusted jeans and apron, were gone, burned or thrown away. I was scrubbed clean, bandaged fresh, and dressed like a doll in a house that felt like a museum. I rubbed my hand absently over my left side. The bandage beneath the sweater was clean, but the scar tissue underneath, the jagged line along my ribs, ached with a dull, phantom throb. It was a reminder that no matter how pretty the clothes were, the body underneath had survived violence. A movement at the gate caught my eye. I held my breath. The heavy iron gates swung open, groaning on their hinges. A car pulled in. It wasn't the battered sedan he had left in. It wasn't the armored truck. It was his sleek black sports car, the one we had taken to the penthouse that first night. It looked pristine, glinting under the fading light. My heart leaped into my throat. I stood up, my legs trembling. The car rolled up the long driveway and stopped at the base of the stairs. The engine cut. The driver's door opened. Kaylin stepped out. He stopped me in my tracks. The demon from the bakery was gone. The wild-eyed, blood-soaked warrior was gone. In his place was the prince. He was wearing a suit that was sharper than a knife blade, charcoal gray, tailored to perfection. His hair was styled back. His face was clean-shaven. He looked impeccable. He looked untouchable. But then he looked up, and his eyes met mine across the expanse of the lawn. And I saw the cracks. His eyes were old. They were heavy with the weight of what he had done, what he had seen. They were the eyes of a man who had walked through fire and was surprised to find himself still standing on the other side. He didn't walk toward the house. He walked toward me. He moved slowly, like every step cost him something. He crossed the grass, ignoring the dampness seeping into his expensive shoes. I took a step forward, then another. I wanted to run to him, but something in his posture held me back. He looked fragile, like he might shatter if I hit him too hard. He stopped 3 feet away from me. He just looked at me. He scanned me from head to toe, checking for invisible wounds. He looked at the cardigan, at my hair, and then his gaze dropped to my waist, where my hand was resting protectively over my side. "Hi," I whispered. It was a stupid thing to say to a man who had just dismantled a crime syndicate. "Hi," he rasped. He took a deep breath, and then, without a word, he dropped to his knees in the grass. "Kaylin." He didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arms around my waist and buried his face in my stomach. He held on tight, his fingers digging into the wool of the cardigan, pressing gently but firmly against the curve of my ribs. I froze for a second. shocked by the sudden submission. Kalen Kovac didn't kneel. He ruled, he commanded. But here he was, at my feet, surrendering. I lowered my hands to his head. His hair was soft, cool from the evening air. I ran my fingers through it, scratching lightly against his scalp. I felt a shudder run through him. "You came back," I said softly. "I told you I would," he mumbled into the fabric. I waited. I let him breathe. I let him take whatever comfort he needed from my presence. After a long minute, he pulled back. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "It's done, Ilara," he said. "It's all done." "The war?" "Finished. Rossi signed the treaty. He knows if he breaks it, I will end him." "And your father?" I asked, the fear spiking again. Kalen's expression hardened. A shadow passed over his face. "My father has retired," he said carefully. "He is going to spend the rest of his days at our villa in Tuscany. He decided the stress of leadership was too much for his heart." I understood. It wasn't a retirement. It was an exile. Kalen had taken the throne. "You're the Don now," I whispered. He winced at the title. "I am the head of the family," he corrected, "but I am not him. I am not running this the way he did. No more drug wars, no more trafficking. We are legitimizing. We are going clean." He stood up, towering over me again. He took my hands in his. He held them carefully, like they were made of porcelain. "I traded the crown for you," he said intensely. "I told the family I would lead, but only on my terms. And my terms are simple. No more senseless violence. No more putting innocents in the crossfire." He reached out and placed his hand on my side, his palm warm against the lingering ache of the scar. "I almost lost you," he said, his voice breaking. "When I saw that van hit the glass, when I saw you huddled in that room, I thought I had killed you." "You saved me," I reminded him. "I put you there," he countered. He let go of me and reached into his jacket pocket. I watched him. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He pulled out a small velvet box. It was black, worn at the corners, antique. He didn't open it immediately. He just held it in his palm, staring at it. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said quietly. "She was the only Kovac who ever died in her sleep. She was kind. She hated the business, but she loved my grandfather. She used to tell me that love was the only thing that could survive in the dark." He looked at me. "I have spent my whole life in the dark, Ilara. I thought that was where I belonged. I thought I was a monster who deserved to be alone." He took a step closer. "But then I saw you dancing in a bakery at midnight, and for the first time I wanted to step into the light." He opened the box. I gasped. It wasn't a diamond solitaire. It was a ruby, dark and deep as blood, surrounded by a halo of small, intricate diamonds. It was set in heavy gold. It looked old. It looked like history. It looked like a burden and a promise all rolled into one. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "It's heavy," he warned. "Wearing this ring, it means carrying my name. It means carrying my past. It means people will look at you and see the Kovac queen. They will judge you. They might even fear you." He looked me dead in the eye. "It is a burden, Ilara, and I have no right to ask you to carry it." He took my left hand. He stroked his thumb over my knuckles. "But I'm selfish," he said. "I'm selfish enough to ask you anyway." He gripped my hand tight. "Share this with me," he pleaded. "Share the burden. Share the life. Be my partner. Be my conscience. Be the one thing I come home to that makes me feel like a man instead of a weapon. Marry me, Ilara." I looked at the ring. I thought about the apartment with the drafty window. I thought about the loneliness that used to eat me alive. I thought about the scar on my ribs, the physical mark of his world on my body. I looked at Kalen. I saw the fear in his eyes. He thought I was going to say no. He thought this was the moment sanity would kick in. and I would run for the hills. But he didn't understand. He wasn't the only one who had been lonely. He wasn't the only one who had been looking for a place to belong. He was my safe place. He was my home. I reached up and grabbed his lapels, pulling him down to my level. "Yes," I said. He blinked. "Yes?" "Yes, you idiot. Yes." He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Then he swept me up into his arms, spinning me around. My feet left the grass. I clung to him, laughing, crying, burying my face in his neck. He set me down but didn't let go. He kissed me. It wasn't like the kiss in the alley, desperate and angry. It wasn't like the kiss in the penthouse, hungry and possessive. It was a kiss of pure joy. It was sweet and slow and full of promise. "You're crazy," he murmured against my lips. "You are absolutely crazy for saying yes." "Probably," I agreed, smoothing the lapel of his suit. "But you're stuck with me now." He rested his forehead against mine. "Forever," he vowed. He looked over my shoulder at the massive, imposing house looming behind us. The estate. Our home. "It's going to be hard," he said. "Changing things, going legit. There will be pushback." "I know. People will talk. Let them talk." He looked back at me, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. The old Kalen, the arrogant, charming prince, was peeking through the exhaustion. "You know I'm going to be unbearable, right?" he said. "I'm going to put security on you like the president. You won't be able to sneeze without a bodyguard handing you a tissue." I rolled my eyes. I expected nothing less, but I have conditions. "Oh?" He raised an eyebrow. "Negotiating already?" "The bakery," I said. "I want to rebuild it. But this time no hidden codes, no back doors, and I hire the staff." He nodded immediately. "Done. Whatever you want." "And," I added, poking him in the chest, "you have to stop watching me from the car." He froze. "You have to come inside, Kalen. You have to sit at a table and drink your coffee like a normal person. No more lurking in the shadows." He looked at me with such fierce love it almost knocked the wind out of me. "I don't want the shadows anymore," he whispered. He wrapped his arm around my waist, his hand resting comfortably, permanently against my side. "I just want you." "Come on," I said, tugging him toward the house. "Let's go home." He squeezed my side. He didn't look back at the gate. He didn't check the perimeter. For the first time since I had met him, he wasn't looking for a threat. He was just walking home with his wife.
Chapter 15. Kalen. The ring looked heavy on her hand. I watched Ilara as we walked up the stone steps of the estate. She was clutching my hand, her thumb tracing the gold band of the ruby heirloom that had belonged to my grandmother. It caught the light of the crystal chandelier in the foyer, flashing blood red and brilliant white. She stopped in the center of the grand entrance hall. The house was silent. The staff had made themselves scarce, sensing the shift in the tectonic plates of power. The air usually smelled of my father's cigars and stale authority. Tonight, it smelled like rain and the fresh night air we had dragged in with us. Ilara looked up at the sweeping staircase, then at the portraits of dead Kovac ancestors lining the walls. They were grim men with hard eyes and blood-soaked legacies. "Do we have to live here?" she asked softly. I closed the heavy oak doors, locking out the world. The click of the deadbolt echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. "For now," I said. "Until the transition is complete. Until I know the rats are truly gone." I walked up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist, my hands settling gently over her ribs. I rested my chin on the top of her head, pulling her back against my chest. "Does it scare you?" I asked. "The ghosts?" She leaned into me. No, it just feels big and cold. We will warm it up, I promised. We will change the drapes. Burn the portraits if you want. Paint the walls yellow. I don't care. It's just a building, Alara. You are the home. She turned in my arms, looking up at me. Her eyes were bright, filled with the adrenaline of the last hour. You're the dawn now, she whispered. That means this is your house. I looked around the foyer. I had grown up terrified of this room. I had learned to walk quietly on these marble floors so I wouldn't disturb my father. I had learned to hide my emotions in the shadows of these pillars. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a conquered fortress. It's our house, I corrected. I took her left hand, the one with the ruby, and kissed her knuckles. Come. There is one more thing I need to do before I can rest. I led her past the library, past the formal dining room, to the east wing. My mother was waiting. We found Elena sitting exactly where we had left her, though she had moved to the window to watch the driveway. When we walked in, she stood up, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked at me, then at Alara. Her gaze dropped to the ring. She let out a breath she must have been holding for 30 years. He signed? She asked. He signed, I confirmed. The war is over. Father is retiring. My mother nodded slowly. She walked over to Alara. Elena Kovac was a woman of steel and etiquette, raised to be the perfect Mafia wife. Silent, invisible, enduring. She took Alara's face in her hands. You are brave, Elena said softly, to take this man, to take this life. I love him, Alara said simply. Elena smiled. It was a genuine smile, one I hadn't seen in a decade. Then you are stronger than I ever was. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet. You did it, Kaylin. You broke the cycle. I'm not done yet, I said. But it's a start. My mother kissed my cheek. Go. Take your bride. I will handle the staff. I will tell them there is a new master of the house. I took Alara's hand again. We walked out of the east wing and headed for the stairs. Where are we going? Alara asked as we climbed. The master suite, I said. She faltered. Your father's room? No, I said, my voice hardening. My room. I didn't take her to my old bedroom, the bachelor suite in the west wing where I had spent my nights planning my escape. I took her to the center of the house, the double doors at the top of the landing. I opened them. The room was massive. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in heavy brocade. There was a fireplace large enough to roast a pig, and a balcony that overlooked the entire estate. It smelled like cedar and lemon polish. My father's things had already been cleared out. Silvio had been thorough in preparing for the takeover, even if he bet on the wrong horse. The room was a blank slate. Alara walked in, looking around nervously. It's very majestic, she said. I hated it. I walked over to the bed and ripped the gold bedspread off, throwing it into the corner. I grabbed the heavy velvet pillows and tossed them onto the floor. Kaylin? Alara laughed, startled. What are you doing? I'm exercising the room, I growled. I went to the windows and threw them open, letting the cool, wet air flood the stuffy space. I turned on the lamps, chasing away the shadows. I turned to her. Better? She smiled, walking over to me. Much. She stopped in front of me, placing her hands on my chest. She could feel my heart beating, still fast, still revving from the confrontation at the gate. You're shaking, she murmured. It's the crash, I admitted. The adrenaline is leaving. I wrapped my arms around her, burying my face in her neck. I breathed her in, She was the only thing that felt real. The rest of it, the title, the house, the power, it all felt like a costume I was forced to wear. But she fit. "I need you," I whispered against her skin. "I need to know you're really here, that I didn't hallucinate you in the smoke of the bakery." "I'm here," she said. "I'm right here." I pulled back to look at her. She looked tired, but beautiful. The cardigan was slipping off her shoulder. I unbuttoned my jacket and let it fall to the floor. I loosened my tie, pulling it from my collar and tossing it aside. "I want to make love to my fiancé," I said. Her cheeks flushed a pretty pink. "Fiancé," she tested the word. "It sounds fancy." I unbuttoned my shirt, watching her eyes track the movement. "It means you're mine," I said. "Legally, morally, in every way that matters." I reached for the hem of her cardigan. She let me peel it off her. Underneath, she was wearing a simple camisole she must have borrowed from my mother's closet. It was silk, delicate. I ran my hands up her bare arms. I traced the line of her collarbone. I let my hands drift down. I skimmed her waist, my fingers finding the ridge of the scar through the thin silk. "Does it hurt?" I asked, the familiar refrain. "Not right now," she whispered. I led her to the bed, the stripped-down, messy bed that finally looked lived in. I laid her down on the crisp white sheets. I loomed over her, bracing my hands on either side of her head. I had taken her in fear. I had taken her in desperation. I had taken her in anger. Tonight, I wanted to take her in celebration. I lowered my body onto hers, careful of her ribs, taking my weight on my forearms. I kissed her slow and deep, tasting the lingering sweetness of the victory. "You are the queen of this house," I murmured against her lips. "You give the orders now. If you want ice cream at 3 a.m., you get it. If you want to turn the ballroom into a giant bakery, we do it." She laughed, breathless. "A bakery ballroom? That sounds messy." I kissed her jaw, working my way down her neck. "We like messy," I said. "Messy is real." I stripped the camisole off her. I removed the rest of her clothes until she lay bare under the gaze of the ancestors watching from the hallway portraits. Let them look. Let them see that the new Kovac Dawn knelt at the altar of a woman who had nothing to offer but her heart. I worshipped her. I took my time. I learned the map of her body all over again. I found the spot behind her knee that made her gasp. I found the way she arched her back when I kissed the white, jagged line on her side. I traced the scar with my tongue, feeling the texture of the healed skin. "Beautiful," I whispered against the wound. "You are so beautiful." She tangled her fingers in my hair, pulling me up. "Kaylin," she breathed. "Please." When I finally pushed inside her, it wasn't a conquest. It was a homecoming. She wrapped her legs around me, pulling me deeper. She whispered my name like a prayer. "Kaylin." I moved with a steady, relentless rhythm. I watched her face, watched the pleasure wash over her features. I wanted to remember this moment forever, the moment the war truly ended. "I love you," I gritted out, the words torn from my chest. "I love you," she cried out, her nails digging into my shoulders. We fell over the edge together, clinging to each other in the vast, empty room. Afterward, I pulled the duvet up over us. I held her against my chest, her back pressed to my front, my arm draped over her waist, my hand cupping her ribs protectively. I listened to the rain start up again outside. The house was quiet. The city was quiet. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to check the door. I didn't feel the need to reach for my gun. I just held my wife-to-be, twisted the ruby ring on her finger, and finally slept.
Epilogue. 5 years later. The nursery was quiet, save for the soft hum of the humidifier and the rhythmic breathing of the 4-year-old boy asleep in the crib. I stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching Kalen. He was in his element. He wasn't wearing a tactical vest or a bespoke Italian suit. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a t-shirt that had seen better days. He was kneeling on the floor, inspecting the window latch for what had to be the 3rd time tonight. "It's locked, Kalen," I whispered, smiling. "I checked it. You checked it. Russo checked it." Kalen didn't stop. He gave the latch one final, firm tug, ensuring the reinforced steel held fast. Then he checked the baby monitor on the dresser to ensure the signal was strong. Only then did he stand up. He turned to me, a sheepish grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. The years had been good to him. The lines of exhaustion that used to define his face were gone, replaced by laugh lines around his eyes. He didn't look like the Don of the city anymore. He looked like a dad who was tired but happy. "I know," he said, keeping his voice low. "Old habits." "Paranoia," I corrected softly, walking over to him. "Vigilance," he countered. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me in. His hands settled naturally, automatically on my sides. His right hand rested gently over my ribs, right over the old scar. It was a reflex he had never lost. Every time he touched me, he checked the wound. It was his way of reminding himself that I was whole, that I had survived his world. "How was the board meeting?" I asked, resting my hands on his chest. "Boring," he said, and he sounded thrilled about it. "We discussed logistics for the shipping containers, grain and textiles, not a single weapon mentioned. And the crumb? Franchise numbers are up 12%, he said. You're a tycoon, Ilara. I might have to retire and let you support me." "You? Retire?" I snorted. "You'd go crazy in a week. You need something to guard." He looked past me at the crib where our son, Leo, was sleeping with one leg thrown over the railing. "I have everything I need to guard right here," he whispered. He kissed my forehead, then leaned down to kiss my lips. It was slow, warm, and utterly safe. 5 years ago, I had sat in a car with a man who thought he was poison. I had sat in a ruined bakery and held a man who was shaking from the terror of losing me. Tonight, the only terror in our lives was the possibility of Leo waking up at 2 a.m. demanding apple juice. The war was a distant memory. The Russis were quiet, sticking to their side of the city. The Kovac name was slowly, painfully becoming known for logistics and philanthropy rather than bloodshed. It wasn't perfect. We still had security. We still had armored cars. But we had peace. "Come on," Kalen murmured against my hair. "Let's go to bed." "Did you check the front door?" I teased. He paused. "I checked. It at 9. It's 10. He sighed, but his eyes were twinkling. "I'll go check it again." "I love you, you maniac," I said. "I love you too." He squeezed my side one last time, his thumb brushing the fabric over my scar, and then walked down the hallway to secure the perimeter. I watched him go. The monster, the prince, the protector, my husband. I looked back at our son, then out the window at the city lights twinkling below. The dark was still out there, but it didn't matter anymore. We had built our own light. The end.